Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this meeting of the Scrutiny and Performance Committee of Perth and Kinross Council of Wednesday, the 23rd of April, 2025. I'm the convener of the committee, Councillor Colin Stewart, and I'm joined by my vice convener, Alistair Bailey, by the clerk to the committee, Miss Molly, and by Miss Simpson, the strategic lead for legal and governance services. Titles have all changed and I'm still getting used to them. I think most members are here in the chambers, and we have members from the three arm's length external organisations, but I'll introduce you when we come to that point on the agenda. Clerk, could you check who's online or announce any apologies or substitutions?
Thanks, convener. We have no formal apologies this morning, but we do have a couple of members joining us online. So can they please confirm that they're present when I call out their name? Councillor Frampton.
Present.
Thank you. And Councillor Shires.
Good morning, present.
Thank you. All other members are present in the chambers, convener.
Thank you very much. Item 2 on the agenda is declarations of interest. Can I ask if there are any declarations of interest in items on the agenda before us today? Not seeing any. Thank you very much. Item 3 is the minute of the meeting of the Scrutiny and Performance Committee of 29th of January 2025 for approval. Can we agree the minute of the 29th of January? Thank you very much. Item 4 is the outstanding business statement. We've got two items on the outstanding business statement. Item number 47, that was information to be shared with members on whether the Regulation for Investigatory Powers Act allows for a Scottish local authority to use covert cameras for detecting and securing prosecution of fly tippers from our November meeting, and that information was circulated yesterday to the committee. And item number 49 was information to be circulated to members on senior staff turnover, and a briefing note was circulated to members towards the end of March by our Human Resources Department. Those actions being complete, can we agree to remove the completed actions from the outstanding business statement? Agreed. Thank you very much. Item 5 on the agenda is just a note to correct a date that was in our scrutiny review findings on the response to the severe weather events of autumn-winter 2023. Can we agree that minor update? Agreed. Thank you very much. So we'll now move on to item 6 on the agenda, our first substantive item, which is the update from the arm's length external organisations. We are joined today from Culture Perth and Kinross by the Chief Executive Helen Smout and by the Senior Finance Manager Ryan Anderson, and I think online by Mr Finlay from the Board of Culture Perth and Kinross. We're also joined from Live Active Leisure by the Chief Executive, Paul Cromwell, and by the Chair of the Board, Ian Collins. And from Perth Theatre and Concert Hall, we're joined by the Chief Executive, Christopher Glasgow, and the Head of Commercial Operations, Mr Dan Campbell. So welcome to all of you. Thank you for being here. In advance of the meeting, we had written out to the three arm's length external organisations, I'll now abbreviate that to ALIOs, asking for their most written management accounts and supporting commentary in written form, and their projected year-end position and supporting commentary, and their for 24-25 and for 25-26 the budget summary and key priorities, again in written form. And we have slides from each of them on relevant topics. So for Perth Theatre and Concert Hall, that's the latest progress report and the 25-26 strategy for the Perthshire box office. For Live Active Leisure, no, I'll go to Culture Perth and Kinross. For Culture Perth and Kinross, the specific items were Perth Museum's 1-year anniversary update and strategy planning underway to support delivery of the rural libraries. And then for Live Active Leisure, progress update on the new Blairgowrie Recreation Centre. That was in anticipation when we wrote out to Live Active Leisure that Blairgowrie Recreation Centre would be open by now. So it was in terms of how the operation and was ongoing, and similar to we did last year with the brand new opening of the Perth Museum. Obviously, Blairgowrie Recreation Centre isn't open yet. There have been delays to that, and so we're joined by the strategic lead for property services, Mr. Crawford, who's going to give us an update on that. Okay, so we're taking a little bit of time just to load up the presentations. So I'm going to slightly reorder, and first of all, Mr. Crawford, if I could come to you for an update on the opening time of the Blairgowrie Recreation Centre. We'll deal with that item first.
Thank you, convener. The original handover of Blairgowrie Recreation Centre was the end of December. One of the key last operations in the construction is the filling of the swimming pool. At that time, we identified a number of small leaks, and that obviously that did not meet our completion criteria. Since then, we've found a number of other leaks, and we've been working through that over the last 3 months to deal with that. To deal with those, I can say at the moment, cautiously optimistic that we've resolved that. And we're currently refilling the pool at this time. We have with LAL and with the school, we have a transition plan ready to put in place when we receive practical completion. But we've had a focus on delivering a quality project for the people of Blairgowrie and the residents of Perth and Kinross from day one, and not accepting anything that didn't meet the completion criteria. I'm very happy to come back at a future date with my construction colleagues from BAM and Hub, and with a fuller explanation of the reasons for the delay.
Thank you very much, Mr. Crawford. And just to say that the leader of the council has written to me to ask if it would be an acceptable topic for a future scrutiny meeting to just learn any lessons from the delay to the opening. And obviously, Mr. Crawford's just said that colleagues from Property Services, Construction and BAM, and did you say Hubco as well, are happy to come and answer questions. So if we could just clear that item, first of all, is that agreeable to everyone? Agreed. Seeing nods around there. Oh, Mr. Cromwell, do you want to come in there?
Yeah, maybe I just could come in, and I probably just, obviously we're working very closely with Stephen and his colleagues at the moment, and I understand, I mean, as the operator, we're as frustrated as everybody is. I suppose despite that frustration, I do recognise that the planning of this new venue has been done in such a way that the existing venue is still available until the new one comes online, and that is a positive amongst what is very frustrating for everybody. As Stephen says, in the meantime, we are going through our own preparedness plans, working with council colleagues, ready for the start of the handover. We've recruited additional staff, so that's been ongoing in the background. It's a larger venue, it's got more facilities, so additional staff are required. So we need to be ready for when we do get the opening date, and that is happening behind the scenes. As the operator, we also have to develop all the operating procedures and make sure that we understand how the venue will work in a range of different situations and circumstances. And again, some of that preparatory work is ongoing, including training and induction programs. And of course, we're maintaining the ongoing engagement with the communities and the school, and discussing areas such as programming. What we absolutely have to make sure going forward is that we're maximising the use of the pool and making sure that it meets the demands of both the school and the community going forward. So it's just to give that reassurance that despite the fact that the pool isn't available yet, there's a lot of work that's going on behind the scenes, both from LAL and obviously working with Stephen and his colleagues.
Thank you very much. Just in terms of timing of that future, coming back to answer questions about the delayed opening, my proposal, if it's acceptable to the committee, is that we don't do that at the next meeting of the committee, which is actually only about 6 weeks away at the start of June. I'm sure Mr. Crawford has, and BAM and the construction team have at the top of their priority actually getting over the finishing line, if you'll pardon the pun, on the recreation centre. So maybe at the following meeting of the committee, if that's acceptable. Okay, thank you. Councillor Forbes, you've got a question for Mr. Crawford.
Thanks, convener. I've got a couple of questions, both relating to money. My first question is for Stephen, just to get a reassurance from him that the delay is not costing the council any money. And for LAL, for Paul, I presume there was some budget forecast predicted based on an opening date which is now passed, and is that costing LAL any money? And if so, are we likely to be able to recoup that from the people who are building it?
I'll answer the first question. It's not costing us any more. The delay is fully the responsibility of the contractor, so they're bearing all those direct costs.
Yes, absolutely. We've obviously put in place a budget arrangements for this year, which included significantly increased targets based on the old recreation centre to the new one. So that obviously will start impacting. We will make savings where we can, although we're developing staff. We'll obviously, where we can, pause things. We're looking at that to make sure that we're not having any kind of additional staff burdens that we don't need to. But obviously there's going to be a discussion there, I suppose, with Stephen and his colleagues just around what that looks like, and depending on when we have a date, the level of impact that's going to have on the budget year.
Does our contract allow us to recoup the cost of those delays from the builders of it?
We have got there's an L&E damages clause within the contract. There's a damages clause for not delivery.
Okay, have we got any more questions from Mr. Crawford? No? Okay, Mr. Crawford, thank you very much for that update. You're discharged. And we'll turn now to the presentations, the slide presentations from the ALIOs. Culture Perth and Kinross, you are down first, but we're still loading up your presentation. So I think we'll go just keep on the same theme and go with Live Active Leisure. So Mr. Cromwell, can I hand over to you?
Thank you, convener. I was asked to provide, excuse me, a brief presentation on the progress, excuse me, health and fitness development, the progress of the health and fitness development at Dewar Centre. So if I could just move to slide 1, please. So just to provide a bit of a recap on the facilities that we have developed a 100+ station gym. Not only though has the space been designed to be accessible, but the range of equipment, which includes, it's a vast range, which includes strength and functional resistance and cardiovascular equipment. It also provides a range of options which are adaptable for all of our client groups. To complement the gym facility, we have developed 2 studio spaces which accommodate a range of activities, including spinning, group fitness, mind, body and well-being classes. Now, as you'd expect with a retro fit, obviously wasn't designed initially for these for health and fitness. We've had to reimagine spaces within the venue to accommodate these changes. which includes the development of our principal studio, which has been developed within the gym area. But taking this approach, an innovative approach as far as we're concerned, has maximised the offer that we can provide. This approach of reimagining space was also required to develop the new changing facilities, which are also accessible off the gym space. Slide 2, please. The next slide. Thank you. This slide provides some key stats and information, excuse me, for the first 6 months of operation up until the end of March. And I will touch briefly on each one. If we look at the start of the journey, our teams were proactive on pre-launch advertising and promotions. There was large-scale advertising campaign, as you'd expect, with the focus of creating awareness of the new facilities at Dewars and encouraging customers to attend the opening weekend. The opening weekend attracted nearly 400 customers from Perth and surrounding areas, with a mix of junior, adult and senior visitors. As part of that opening weekend, we offered non-members the opportunity to try the facilities for 7 days for free. 485 customers took advantage of the offer, with 169 customers then taking out a direct debit membership, which is very positive. There has, of course, been further promotions as we continue to proactively promote the facility and the range of health and fitness offer that we provide there to raise that customer awareness. So a key question then will be, well, how has this translated into the usage and the attendance figures over this period? So as you can see, we have just over 98,000 usages recorded, with 4,358 unique users as part of that. So on average, over that 6-month period, we're looking at 16,000 usages per month. These are really, really positive for us, given that we were starting from a renewed baseline because we had a gap in that Perth City fitness provision over quite a number of months. And they're on target to exceed the figures that we achieved when the new fitness facilities opened at Bells. So it's been positive. Other key questions we would want to know is, who is using the venue? Are we providing a balanced programme? Is it appealing to different groups of customers with different needs and across different life stages? So if we look at this, we can see that 24% of customers are in the 11 to 17 age group, which is just an incredible response. The gym has undoubtedly provided a positive environment where our young people can attend the gym on their own or with friends and under the supervision of our qualified staff. In terms of sport and club development, facilities used by the current and future Commonwealth athletes, we have what we call emerging athletes programs, and we have over 40 athletes receiving strength and conditioning training to help develop them in their sports. And their sports range from a huge number of different sports, including hockey, curling, basketball, swimming, judo, football, and athletics, to name but a few. 10% of our customers are aged over 65. Being active for longer and supporting those with health issues is obviously a key priority for the organisation. In terms of wellbeing, there are currently 18 wellbeing classes running within Dewars Centre. This includes cardiac rehab, social circuits, falls prevention, activity referral, sit to stand, and strength and balance. Referrals from healthcare professionals continue to increase and demand continues to grow for the supported activity programme. In the last financial year, we've received 142 referrals for Dewars Centre, Perth. There were over 1,200 individual attendances in Q4 alone to the gym and class sessions. Due to this increase of referrals and individuals requiring supported activity provisions, we've started 2 new referral gym sessions utilising core staffing at Dewars Centre, and this has helped in terms of managing the offer and the sessions to the increased demand. I think this snapshot presentation of the facilities and their performance in the first 6 months is extremely positive. And I think they clearly show that the facilities that we have provided for all of our communities. But if we can move on to the next slide, and my final slide, I would like the final word to be from one of our customers. Thank you.
Right. Okay. I think having a video play on through the presentation might have been a bit ambitious, but maybe you could summarise what your customer was going to say, Mr. Cromwell.
Well, we have a very inspirational member who's in his 90th year, who's really just given his reflections on his experience and how he is an inspiration to us all in terms of what he does, the fact that he works out 3 times a year, the fact that he's had some health issues over the years, and his drive to maintain physical activity and fitness and using our facilities has certainly helped him in terms of managing the range of these conditions. And it's just a very short video again, but as I say, it's inspirational, and I think once again it really just shows that what these facilities provide is across, an age group of 11 to 90 in terms of people that are using our facility, and it's been welcomed very positively by our communities. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks very much, Mr. Cromwell. Obviously, the presentation's been circulated to members so we can see it, and it'll also be uploaded to the committee meeting page on the website so that it's available for members in the public, and members of the public, I should say. So thank you very much for your presentation, Mr. Cromwell. First question is from Councillor Forbes.
Thanks, Evina. Just a quick one, Paul. I think the slide before this one said there was something like 405 people took up the special offer. Was that a week's free membership? Seemed like a good idea, presumably 485, I'm being reminded. I presume the idea behind that was to get people to join up full time. I'm wondering how successful that was.
Thanks, Councillor. Yes, it was very much a pre-launch offer to try and stimulate the demand. Now, I think I perhaps mentioned it. I think it was 170 that took up the offer. So that was a really positive, encouraging start. It was a really positive weekend, and I think anybody that's seen the facilities, as I say, the range of facilities we have, saying 100-station gym can mean that it's just rows and rows of equipment, but what we actually have is different types of equipment as well as the normal. So you have equipment there that's suitable for adaptations for people with health challenges, as well as things like Olympic bars. So it really does cover all aspects of the skills and abilities and needs that people have.
And Vice Convener.
We're on. Thank you, Convener. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you for the information there. Retaining 88% of gym memberships with a gap in service and a venue change is really quite good, actually, in my book. I think in the commercial sector, you'd probably expect people would expect something like a third drop off from that. So I think that's something to be proud of. It does, however, lead me to ask. You mentioned that was shy of targets. I'm pleased to know that you were being more ambitious than I've expected, but wanted to ask what was the target? And also, is there a picture here where you also have walk-ups on top of that, as in can people just come and use the gym ad hoc? And what's the picture like that there? How does that compare between Bells and Dewars for the ad hoc usage, the walk-ins? Thank you.
Certainly, the usage figures that I've provided are overall usages, and what we're seeing is that's broadly mirroring slightly above the months we had at Bells, but obviously we had transitioned from Rodney to Bells, so therefore we started from a different point. So we're ahead of that. So in terms of targets, we'd broadly mirrored Bells to a degree because we understood the model that we had. We picked it up, if you like, and moved it to Dewars and developed it there, albeit that we opened at a slightly different time of year, which obviously can affect customer footfall. So in terms of targets, we are reaching those targets. In terms of conversions, obviously that's what we want to look at, but you're right, we're providing the balance. So not only do we have direct debit, we have people can take out a 30-day membership, people can just pay as they go. We have a Passport Live Active card that people can buy for £21 a year, which gives them 25% off every activity, not just gym and fitness. So we have an absolute range of price options, if you like, for different to suit people. Beyond that as well, I think what's been what's been welcomed was to develop mobile apps. So again, in terms of how you actually book into the facilities and pay those facilities, we've digitised that. So that's something that's been welcomed, and certainly probably by the younger users of the facility. But beyond that, we still have a live reception point. So again, in terms of being able to provide that additional support, which I think is the extra that we do beyond a commercial facility, then we are still able to do that.
Thank you. And Councillor Smith.
Thank you very much, Convener. Thank you very much, Paul, for that presentation. It's very good. A couple of wee questions I have here is, one was partly answered there just now. I take it we're very competitive on price compared with other facilities. And you talked about future Commonwealth Olympic participants. Are we still got the facility up there to hold tournaments? Thank you very much.
Thank you for the question. Yeah, absolutely. It's I would never describe what we do as being commercial, but in terms of health and fitness, it's probably the most commercial offer we have. And yes, price sensitivity is obviously something we're very aware of. We look at that when we are considering our products. We also look at that in terms of charges. And for example, this year we've made the board made the decision not to increase the charges of our direct debit fitness membership at the moment, to make sure that it is attractive so that we can grow that membership. When we look at charges, we look at what local providers are providing and charging, as well as neighbouring trusts, and we also look at Sports Scotland also produce an annual report. So we're very aware of that, and we've got to deal with the competing areas of trying to generate income, but at the same time making sure that we are developing growth. So it's something we are very aware of, and particularly around this area. In terms of competitions, is this in relating to sports competitions?
Yes, really, yes.
I think we've discussed this before, and I think yes, we still have facilities where we're obviously managing other venues within Perth. So we have the North Inch campus, which has significant sports hall availability, but I suppose it's down to the nature of the types of competition and tournament we have. So I think we have to recognise that Bell Sports Centre provided a different offer, but we still have some alternative facilities in Perth where that opportunity to a certain degree still exists.
Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Convener. I think you've done an amazing job in actually transferring everything into tours from the two facilities we previously had. Are the facilities there, would you class as permanent, or have you made it so that they're actually reusable elsewhere? I'm thinking of PH2O in the future. Thank you.
I suppose the space that we've used, obviously it was used for a different purpose before we've developed it into the health and fitness and studio we have at the moment. So I suppose to a certain degree there's the potential still of a blank canvas that it could be converted into something else with suitable investment. Obviously, we've made changing rooms, which will be a permanent fixture going forward. PH2O, I'm not going to labour on PH2O, but PH2O is still at least 5 years away, to my knowledge. So in terms of the investment, it's been a significant investment in the facilities, and I think that's reflected in the quality of what we've been provided, what we are providing, and also in the success of it in the short time it's been open. So I suppose to answer your question is yes, I think that you've got a space there that with investment could still be converted quite straightforward, quite easily. In terms of equipment, you can obviously pick that equipment up and move that to somewhere else. So that investment's still there as well.
Thank you. And Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Convener, and thank you for the presentation. Some great news there and some good numbers. Just one for interest and then one just to try and get some direct feedback. What's the average daily footfall? What's your average daily footfall and what's your busiest day? But having answered that, can you give us some feedback that you're getting from the people using the facility about how they feel about the change from whether it's Bells or otherwise other clubs coming into yours? Has it been positive? Thank you.
Sorry, could you repeat the first question there?
Yeah, I was just really asking about what's your average daily footfall? Thank you.
I'm trying to do that mental calculation. So we're averaging around 16,000 a month. I'm not going to try and do it right now. But obviously in terms of what that looks like, so as you would imagine, we have peaks and troughs throughout the day, although it's consistently used. And obviously we have people that are there pre-breakfast, open from 6:30 in the morning, pre-work. And now we have the changing rooms open. Obviously that's certainly helped attract more people for that. And then obviously from 4 o'clock we have young people starting to come in up to, you're looking at 5 till 9, 4 till 9 is a peak period. Weekends being a little bit quieter, but still consistent. Obviously, in terms of the feedback we had, I was hoping to provide you with a live video of one of our members to give you just a flavour of the impact that we're getting there. I think the fact that we've got better numbers of what was a really good facility at Bells as well. I think the fact that we've increased the numbers gives us a really clear reflection that people are enjoying the facilities, but we're obviously getting more direct feedback as well from that. And I think it doesn't stand still. I think people mentioned it's a competitive area. It is. And so what we are continually doing is looking at our program and developing it. So it's not just the fitness gym. We also have group fitness. We have different types of class within that group fitness program, which have got to make sure that they stay current and innovative and interesting to keep people coming back. We have wellbeing classes. We have spinning classes, and I have to say that our spinning was actually a little bit quieter at Bells, but since it's moved to Dewars, it's actually increased in its popularity to the point where we're having to make additional provisions in terms of how we balance the program against other things. So overall, so far it's been a positive experience for us.
Thank you for that. That's really helpful. I'm not going to argue with the numbers, but if we've got 16,000 a month, that's probably about 500 a day. How are we coping with that with regards to parking facilities?
Well, obviously 25% of our use is by 11 to 17-year-olds. So not huge demand there from that perspective. There's a change of nature. We have a good park up there. The car park there has got a provision, I think it's about 380 spaces. We're obviously encouraging people. We have cycle stops. So to date, there has not been any issues in terms of how we're managing the car park and the provision that we're providing. It's been managed within existing facilities and not created any pinch points so far. Obviously, a pinch point for the pool, particularly, would be at weekends when it's going to be slightly quieter at Dewars Centre, unless we have an ice event or a different type of event. So far, we've managed within the resources we have.
Thanks. And a question from me. Just going back to opening of the new Blair Rec Centre, Mr. Cromwell. In terms of the plans, for that transition, understand from constituents that who use the facilities that there was planned to be a sort of 2-week period where the facility would be, in between closing old Blair Rec and opening new Blair Rec. What my constituents were wondering was why there needs to be that 2-week gap. Is that still in the transition, or could that be reduced? Because if you've got instructors coming up to deliver classes, coming up to Blair to deliver classes, it doesn't, they can enter one building on Tuesday evening and the other building on Wednesday morning.
Thanks for the question. Yes, I think we have reduced that, but I think we just need to re-emphasise that the building, we are the operator of the building, and the building hasn't been handed over, so it's a complex building. We need to be really sure that our staff are trained, can respond to emergencies, and understand how the facility operates. So I think that in itself, making sure that we've got that adaptation and training program in place and that we've had on-site training is really essential. So we have to build that in to a program. unfortunately, there's got to be a gap because we haven't got the size of the team isn't there that we can operate Blairgowrie Recreate, the old one, whilst we do all of that in preparation for the new one. So we are minimising that. It's also not been used, so I think that there'll be school use as well as part of that transition plan. So again, we want to build it, we want to transition the opening. So I think that's all built into the programme, but I think it has reduced from the 2-week period.
Thanks very much. And then the other question, again related to opening Blair Rec. In your initial remarks before your presentation, you were when we were talking about the Blair Rec, you were talking about engagement with the community. So I just wondered what the plans are for engaging in the membership and the users of the facility in terms of what classes they'd like to see, what facilities there are in the Blair Rec.
Yeah, this engagement certainly has been ongoing, and obviously it's difficult when you're trying to prepare for something but don't actually know the opening date. So that's been ongoing, and we've been building capacity. Now, one of the areas that's difficult is making sure that you have trained staff, for example, on the different range of group fitness that we have. But that's something that we've been actively working on behind the scenes, improving that resilience, skilling our staff to make sure that they're available and able to deliver a different range of classes. And obviously we'll have a dedicated studio in the new facility, which we haven't had in the old one. In terms of the timing, obviously the timing of the opening has a significant impact on the types of engagement. So typically your winter sports bookings, for example, are now coming to the end of the season. So we'll start engage with them in terms of facilities and requests and everything for the next winter season and over the summer. So there's different groups there. Again, with the school programme, we want to make sure that we understand the requirements of the school, particularly for daytime access. And again, with the new facility, because it's a larger pool, it means we'll have more flexibility to introduce the community during the day. So again, we're getting towards the timing now of looking at next year's school programme. So that will be an active conversation about how do we make sure that we maximise that. So I think there's across the programme, there are a range of different discussions being had in preparation for the facility opening.
Thanks. And is there some sort of feedback mechanism for ordinary gym users, class users and so on, in terms of availability of classes or range of classes available?
Direct to our venues and our venue managers and our instructors, but also we obviously have comments that can be put to our office or on the website or anything else. There's a whole range, but the most effective obviously discussions locally, and obviously as well as part of our programme review we can see what works and what doesn't work based on the usage and the numbers and the direct feedback that we're getting from instructors.
Okay, thanks very much. And Councillor Shires, you wanted to come in with a comment.
Just following on from your questions there, Convener, to Mr. Cromwell, just to say that thank you very much to the staff at the current rec who have been extremely resilient and have continued to offer really good service. I hear nothing but positive comments about the staff there. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor Shires, and I'm sure we'll look forward to getting the new Blair Rec open and up and running. We'll move on now. So we've got the other two ALIOs. We'll keep all three ALIOs in case there are any generic questions for all three at the end, but we'll move on now to Culture Perth and Kinross and their Chief Executive, Helen Smout. I'll hand over to you for your presentation.
Thank you very much, Convener. Sorry. Hopefully the slides don't break in the middle. They may. Thank you very much. I know that you mentioned earlier at the top of the meeting that an update on the museum and then the libraries. I've actually reversed it in the presentation, if that's okay. So I can move on to the next slide, please. Thank you. The libraries in this last year have seen just under a 5% increase in footfall, which is, we're still not quite back to pre-pandemic levels, but it's a very heartening thing to see. Following the budget announcements earlier this year and the reversal of decisions to look at closures potentially of the 5 rural libraries, we're now working on the library strategy for the next 2 years. And this is actually a strategy strategy for all libraries, within which the rural libraries are addressed. So we're working with staff at the moment. We have a series of meetings set in each of the 5 rural libraries first, and they start the week of the 5th of May in the evenings. And information about that's gone out to each of the libraries and to everybody who'd engaged with us throughout that process. And what we're looking at is really protecting the core provision and the provision that protesters so eloquently and passionately fought for, but looking for the opportunities with communities now, and what are the opportunities of harnessing that energy and that passion. We want to make sure that we continue, you know, our core business is supporting reading and literacy, and within that, health and well-being. So we can do so much, but if there is to be an extension of what we do, then we need to engage and collaborate with others, because that's not necessarily our skill set. We also want to continue to broaden access to culture and literature. So our events programme, in this last year, we've seen a 57% increase in the number of events that we've delivered across all of our activities. And that's really a kind of gateway for many people that are maybe nervous about using a library space. It's not always a trusted space in the way that I would think of it, or others might think of it. And we want to have this focus, as I say, of community engagement and of looking at opportunities for fundraising, although there are always challenges with that with a statutory provision. If I can have the next slide, please. So the key aims of our strategy, and we'll be discussing these with communities, so they may develop and alter. This is our starting point, and we want to make sure that communities have an opportunity to input into these. But the aims really are to make sure that we're identifying a long-term operating model for libraries, and that might take many forms in different communities, depending on the need, depending on the interest. What was very apparent in the work that we did over the last year is there is no appetite for voluntary run services in the region. So we need to look at how we make a sustainable service, because it will always require funding at its heart. But what can a community help with? What might they be able to add value? And what can we do to extend opportunities for funding in particular? We'll continue to establish our library hubs. So our library hubs are where we have larger libraries which have more space and more resources and enable us to do things differently than we might be able to do in a much, much smaller space. So extending access to local and family history provision, to ancestry, to research skills, information skills, to make sure that there's still digital skills, coding for children and young people, making sure that what we can offer in those maximizes the use of them. And most of those are in community campus spaces, but we're also looking at Blairgowrie as a hub, given its geographical location and the fact that there isn't another community campus of its type in that area. We want to continue to develop community relationships. There was a lot of passion and a lot of energy. Some of that was quite challenging. Sometimes our staff sometimes got the raw end of people's passion, and that was a wee bit difficult. So we want to rebuild those relationships. We want to work with people, not just within communities, but other stakeholders, to see how we can continue to build on what was always a really successful library service and make that even more so going forward. And we want to identify new ways of working which increase the efficiency of our current processes. So librarians are wonderful, wonderful people, but they love a process. And if there are ways that we can make that shorter, more efficient and quicker so that they can spend more time with their communities and more time in developing the services, then we would certainly want to do that. If I can have the next slide, please. So we will continue with the professional staff that we have, with the quality range of reading materials. And I think I've said this to the committee before. We have one of the lowest book fund budgets in Scotland. I think we're 32 out of 33 local authorities for the amount we spend on books. But we are the 5th largest issuing book authority. So we make the most of what we have. We make our stock work really hard. We make sure that in terms of the presentation of that stock, the choices we make about purchasing it, that we work really hard. The staff work incredibly hard around that. We'll continue to provide access to Wi-Fi and to computing, which for so many people, particularly in rural environments, is essential. And the provision of community information. The librarians hold so much of what happens in the local community, which is perhaps not necessarily really visible to other people, but they hold that and they are a trusted provider of that information. The opportunities, as I've mentioned, I think there is an opportunity for increased volunteering, for people to get involved, to add value by helping out with code clubs or adding value to the events and things that we run. There's an opportunity for community use or extension of opening hours, make more use of some of the smaller libraries, which are only open for very few hours. And we have a model of that in Kinross, where the community extends the opening there on a Saturday afternoon and on a Monday. We want to look at the increased sustainability through fundraising. So there's an opportunity there for the community to support fundraising activity and get involved. And we will look at co-location and or delivery of wider services. Are there other things that could be delivered through the library services which help their long-term sustainability? Next slide, please. In terms of the timelines for this, our first meetings, as I've mentioned, are the week beginning the 1st of May. We're looking for local library plans to be produced, and that's in consultation with communities by October this year, with implementation from November onwards. That doesn't mean that we won't stop making change where we can make it before then, but it will be when those plans begin. We'll review and evaluate that in the autumn next year, with a report coming back to Council in December, so that you can see the impact of that strategy and where we've got to with that. And I'll pause there because that's the end of the library piece before moving on to the museums, just if there are any questions.
Councillor Forbes.
Thanks for that, Helen. I think, as you know, I'm a big fan of our library service, and you mentioned volunteering there, which got me a little bit worried. Last night I was at a presentation where we thanked, as a council, the people who go out and pick litter, and one of the ladies sitting next to me said that she felt that as a council we're pushing our volunteers just a bit too far. And I'm wondering if you see that same risk in the library service. If we just keep asking more and more of our volunteers, eventually we'll have less volunteers and less getting done.
I think there's always a risk, and thank you for the question, around volunteering. You know, we have a finite number of people in the community and they have a finite amount of time available. I think it's about working with people and identifying opportunities that are proportionate and appropriate. I think that the idea of the voluntary-led model of running the library service, there's no appetite for that. But we do know that there are people who are interested and engaged and would be keen to share their skills and help out maybe for a couple of hours once a month or so. And as long as we can work and support the volunteer and support the volunteer in that role as well as possible, then I'm hopeful that we might get a few in each of the locations and they'd make a real difference, and hopefully the reward for them would be as great as it is for us.
Councillor Carr.
Thank you. With regards to the meetings that you intend to have with libraries, and in particular the rural libraries, would it be possible to ensure that elected members in these wards are invited along to these meetings as well? And as a follow-up question, just post meetings that elected members are kept updated in regards to the local library plans that you're talking about?
We can certainly extend that invitation. Everybody is welcome. You might end up with a job to do if you do come along, because we're looking for volunteers to get involved. But absolutely, we can share that information, and happy to keep members informed of progress over the next 2 years.
Thanks, and certainly I attended a couple of the meetings that happened over the last year, and it was very useful to be to have that information, and so thanks to you and the staff for doing those meetings. Councillor Allen.
Thank you, convener, and thanks, Helen. I was quite vociferous throughout the campaign, and I was quite pleased to see the outcome. with regards to the volunteer, I think that there is an appetite for volunteering, but there's no appetite with regards to understanding that our librarians are the professionals in our libraries. And that's the worry, that the librarians themselves are going to disappear. So if we can give some kind of, commitment to longer term librarians, I think that would help and ease some of the asks when we look to volunteers. Given that we've got now an allowance through the budget for the next 2 years, I'm just going to ask, what do you think is your biggest ask or your biggest need over those 2 years with regards to your timeline there? Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question. I think the biggest, it's probably not an ask, it's probably a challenge in a way, is capacity. So we were delighted to receive funding, which, you know, when things come through the sausage factory of funding, is perhaps not like the headline grabbing figure, but it's very welcome. But what that does is sustain existing provision. It doesn't add additional capacity, and capacity is the issue for us. So, you know, we will do as much as we can with the resource that we have. We will seek additional resource where we can, but we will always have to go at the pace that our capacity allows. We don't want to lose our staff because we're overstretching or overworking them in particular. We are very proud of the work that we do. So that's probably a challenge rather than an ask. And maybe if there is an ask around there, it's for some understanding of that and just bearing with us if we're not immediate in response or providing information at very short notice.
Thanks, Helen. And just a kind of left wing thing here. Have we ever thought about looking for sponsorship, external sponsorship for library services?
It's something to consider, but sponsorship generally is very challenging thing to secure, and it again, for statutory services, the sponsorship thing is not necessarily very attractive to the sponsor because there's not a lot of benefit necessarily in return. We can't offer them wonderful corporate dinners and things like that you might expect from a sponsorship package, but we're open to everything, and we're about to look at the procurement of new mobile vehicles, replacements for the current ones we've done, and to build into that things like advertising opportunities on the side of the vehicles. So we're looking at every possible opportunity, and we'll bear in mind, but if anybody has a business and they'd like to sponsor us, we're very happy to talk to them.
Thanks very much, and I think that might be the first left-wing idea that Councillor Allen's ever come up with. But to pick up on your first point there, Councillor Allen, just to ask the so we've got the staff who support the LEOs in attendance. I was just wondering whether we can exercise the sort of council staff in terms of community engagement, community learning and development to support any of the or whether we would plan to support any of that engagement work that Mr. Smout was talking about. Mr. MacDonald.
Yeah, thank you. Steve MacDonald, Economic Development Manager in Business Growth and Investment. Yeah, I mean, we're working very closely with each of the ALIOs, so I think, you know, we've communicated that offer to them both from Economic Development and potential other council services as well. So yeah, that offer's on the table to help with that.
Thanks very much. And Councillor Smith, you're next.
Thank you very much, Convener, and thank you, Helen, for the presentation. Somebody like me that's younger days read books and now I'm finding them again. There was a gap in the middle. So my concern a wee bit is that I have someone in particular in mind here who in the past didn't know about the arrangements for getting books delivered to her. She's obviously she's housebound. She loves the service. She thinks it's very good. My worry a wee bit about is that further services, because unfortunately now the eyesight is now going. And obviously the next process would be audiobooks, etc. Now, I only found out the other day by sheer mistake, by sheer coincidence from someone, that there is a service available for this. Now, the family know nothing about this, and I'm a wee bit worried about how we get that information across to people, families, maybe through other stakeholders like people who visit, things like that. So I think also going back to Councillor Forbes's point, volunteers are going to take more and more on. So we really have to watch that. But it's a service that there's a lot of people out there who don't know about this, and it would make their lives worth living, to be quite honest, if we could access this much easier. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. So we're very keen that people know and understand about the Books on Wheels service, first of all, which takes material to anybody who is housebound of any age for any reason. Could be post-operative, or it could be conditions of age, or anything at all. And we can get delivered, and we work with wonderful volunteers. We took on all the RSV volunteers when they weren't able to continue, so that we could deliver that service. And things like our e-audiobook service, the audiobooks that we have on site, we do try and promote as much as possible. The information is all available on our website and in the libraries themselves, but you're right, it doesn't always reach people where they are. So we continue to find ways, hopefully innovatively. A couple of years ago, you remember we had all the adverts on buses and things like that to try and promote the fact that people could get services like that. And our staff will always work on a one-to-one basis to help people access services if they're really struggling. So I would encourage anybody to make contact with the library service. In the first instance, they can pick up the phone if they're unable to leave the house, or they can have a relative do that on their behalf. And we'll certainly look at opportunities in other ways. I sometimes think with marketing, advertising, promotion, you can do everything and you'll still miss somebody, unfortunately. So the more that perhaps we can all share getting the message out, the better.
Yeah, I agree. Well done. But for a person who is not watching the TV because she can't see it, so the Wi-Fi, etc., is a no-go. It's these people that concern me, how we get through to them. But thanks very much, for your answer. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Welch.
Thank you, Convener. First of all, I echo Councillor Carr's request for elected members to become involved. I think that's absolutely key. I also welcome Convener's question with regards using other resources with the Council to support the consultation. The first consultation obviously did not it did not work, and it is very important that it does work this time. My question is effectively around each of these libraries being quite unique, and the opportunities effectively will probably centre around bespoke solutions. Is the consultation being set up to recognise, if you like, the generality of what's been trying to achieve, but also the specific opportunities for each of the individual libraries in question? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. We're absolutely aware that it needs to reflect local needs. So the meetings have all been set up in local areas and very much focused on the local membership and local community using and supporting that library. And I think that's absolutely key going forward. There does have to be some consistency across the organisation in how we deliver services and what the core offer is, and to protect that core offer. And we will continue to bring that to the discussion, but we're leaving lots of scope. And as I say, I think in the presentation, I'm really hopeful that we'll end up with models which are different in each area, because that's what each area needs. And that's why we're trying to give it the time over those 2 years for implementation before we rush to review and evaluation, making sure that we've had the time to develop what each community would like.
Thank you. And I think, just one sort of follow-up, in terms of how those first meetings are set up, in terms of who's leading them, how we use these additional resources within the council around expertise and consultation. I think it's important that that initial meeting and structure is clear, so that ultimately the consultation will be a success this time around. Thank you.
Yep, absolutely. I agree with you fully. And each of those initial meetings will be led by myself, so that we can set out the plans and the strategy as I have here today, and to explain to people how they can get involved and how we want to make sure that their voices are heard throughout the process, and make sure that people sign up to actually give their time and get involved. We have to find the balance between having meetings and sharing information and actually having people who are prepared to give some time and to help and to get involved taking things forward.
Thanks very much. I'm not seeing any more questions on the library section of the presentation. So Helen, if you want to carry on with the Perth Museum.
Yes, thank you. So as well as library provision, as you know, we have our museums provision, and we are probably slightly shell-shocked to have got to the end of the first year as quickly as we have. It's been an incredibly busy year. We have well exceeded our targets with just over 258,000 people visiting in the first year. Our targets were 167,000. We have thankfully and wonderfully won numerous awards, both for the architecture and the development of the building, and for the content and the innovation of the museum and what we are providing. And we are recognised increasingly across the UK and internationally as being one of the leading local regional museums, which is a wonderful asset for Perth to have. So if I could have the next slide, please. So some of the figures, as I say there, in terms of the visitor numbers, the 38 plus school visits, those are the 38 schools who told us they were coming and have probably come more than once, but we get a lot of schools who just rock up on the day, which is wonderful. And it's lovely to see. And those are not just schools from Perth and Kinross. Our Macbeth exhibition, which opens this week, some of the first people to book those were schools outside Perth and Kinross, bringing their pupils to come and see that exhibition. We've had more than 100 group visits, and again, when we're starting from a standing start, that number is growing and continue to grow. We get requests and inquiries every day, and I've had to create a new post for somebody to manage all of that, because it was so overwhelming just how many people are being getting in contact. We have run some really incredible and hopefully award-winning. We've got some announcements about some shortlisting for some of our events coming up very shortly, which has brought in a huge and diverse audience, but it's been a really useful way, particularly to engage with local audiences. Most of the tourists and visitors wouldn't come to an event because they wouldn't necessarily be aware it was on, or it might not fit the days that they're staying with us. But local audiences very much are engaging with the events. The two temporary exhibitions, the Unicorn won Social Justice Award for its engagement of the LGBTQ+ community at the Museum and Heritage Awards, or Museum Association Awards, sorry. And we have the Waters Rising, which was quite a challenging exhibition to do, the exploration of both the interpretation and historical impact of flooding and local impact. And again, that has been recognised for its innovation. And we have the curator, Niamh Finlay, who worked very much in that exhibition, is the guest speaker at a national conference on climate change. So visitor satisfaction has been wonderful. We've had more than 2 million additional high street visits between the time that the museum opened and the end of December. Now, we'll not be the only people that have driven that, but it is certainly part of it. We're seeing an increased interest in accommodation and booking for wider Perthshire, and 67% of the visitors that we have surveyed have said that they have an improved perception of Perth as a place to visit and to work or to live. And that was very much one of our key targets for the museum, was to help change people's idea of Perth as a place to visit. We hear the words all the time that, oh gosh, I'd forgotten Perth was here, or I'm rediscovering it, or it's wonderful, I haven't been here for years. So it's bringing people back to the city, and it's bringing people, new people, to the city. And there's a huge interest. We've just recently been working with Suzanne Kaminski within the the council on some destination marketing, which is not just about the museum, but the much wider offer in Perth City, springboarding from the interest that the museum has brought. And the journalists who came over were excited. They knew, they'd heard about the museum, they were excited about that, and they were from Italy, Germany, Ireland. It's not just a local conversation. If I can have the next slide, please. At the heart of the museum is the Stone of Destiny. However, only around a third of people coming visit the stone. 2/3 are coming to see the rest of the museum and to see the story of Perth and the objects that are in there in the temporary exhibitions. We had our first annual condition check of the stone, so that's part of the loan agreement, and I'm pleased to say that it was in excellent condition. We haven't spoilt it. It's doing really well, and visitors continue to find the opportunity to have access and time with the stone, even if they're not from the UK or weren't aware of it, the object, before they arrived, as something that's very moving. They recognise its significance and its continued significance, and the fact that they have something they can access free, they're really appreciative of, which is always good news. If I can have the next slide, please. And as I mentioned, I blow the trumpet, not for myself, but for Perth, because it really is an award-winning museum in the heart of Perth. And it's something that everybody should be really proud of. You know, we had a wonderful letter from a gentleman called Corey Dingle, who was involved in the Waters Rising exhibition. And he wrote a letter to the city saying he was from Canada, and how bowled over he was that Perth could have a museum of this standard and this ambition, and that it was so well supported by the local authority who had driven the project forward, and that we should take great pride in it. And that's something really rather wonderful. And we continue. We have some more awards that we've been shortlisted for. Museum and Heritage Awards are some of the top awards in the country. And again, we don't always seek these. They're coming to us and saying, you know, we've seen the museum, we've heard about it. This is something important. So it does feel like it's a bit of a moment for Perth that is going to make lasting change. And if I can have the next slide, I'm going to try and do a poll, Cromwell, and say that it's not just what I say, it is also what our visitors say. You'll have to click again, hopefully. Sort of working. And unfortunately, no sound, but they're saying wonderful things. And these are some Irish visitors who'd come over from Falcha, Ireland, specifically to see the museum because they're doing museum developments in Ireland and Dublin, and they really wanted to learn from us. And we have had lots of those sectoral industry visits coming to learn what's been done. And this young couple here were our 250,000th visitors through the door, and they were on their honeymoon and had chosen Perth because they knew the museum was here. They were on their way up to the Cairngorms for their honeymoon. So you can just click to the next slide, thank you. So we have Macbeth opening to the public on Friday. Pre-sales of that are exceptional and much higher than the pre-sales for Unicorn, which was our opening exhibition. Glass is now open at Perth Art Gallery. I think it's really keen to note that across the year we've had more than a 20% increase in footfall at the art gallery, and we have just opened our hands-on art children's gallery in the art gallery. So we continue to develop the art gallery as well as the museum experience, and our travel trade promotions. We have a number of new tour companies who are coming to Perth for the first time, and they're coming to visit not just the museum, but they're going to Black Watch, they're going going to the art gallery, they're having a good time in town as well to spend wandering around. So we continue to bring more people into the city, and we continue to work hard to engage with as many different tour operators as possible and bring them into the town. So hopefully, if you can't make anything that we have on over the summer, you will look forward to Mary Queen of Scots' last letter, which we're really pleased, and we can only bring that to Perth because of the museum and the conditions that we offer in the museum. That's not an object that we would have on display otherwise. So again, another reason to really celebrate and support what the museum has achieved. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the presentation. First question is from Councillor Forbes.
Helen, I wonder if it might be an opportune moment for you to maybe give us some of the facts about the extra money that was given to the museum cafe for the, I think in the last budget, there's been quite a lot of anti-council, anti-museum stuff on social media. I know it's not true, but it might be worth you just explaining the background behind that.
Yeah, thank you very much, and thank you for the question, because it's a really good opportunity just to reiterate, because as you say, there's been quite a lot of negative feeling, and some of our staff have faced some verbal abuse as a result of some of the negative and inaccurate coverage of that. The council had very generously offered to support the cafe in its first year of operation should it require it, and set aside money for cultural reserves to do so. We have never drawn down on that money. There has been no public money gone into the cafe in this year. Our cafe sits in our trading company alongside our retail and our venue hire, and our trading company is profitable, and it gives money to the charity. So there is no flow of public money to the cafe, and I know that's what's been widely reported. The Courier did print a retraction and a correction of that, but it was, as always, buried in very small writing somewhere. But it is something that we continue to say. It will be the narrative, and we're not going to change that narrative, unfortunately. But there's no public money, and no additional funds from the council have gone into that cafe at all.
Thank you. Councillor Allen, you have a couple of questions.
Thank you, Convener, and thank you, Helen. Some really good and encouraging stuff there, so well done. I'm sure you're all delighted and proud of what's happening there. Councillor Forbes did actually ask a similar question to my first one, so I'll just miss that and say, when people walk into the museum, they see this big facade that talks about the Stone of Destiny. I just wonder if you can give some idea as to why only a third of your visitors are going in to see that. Thank you.
So there are two reasons for that. One is that a lot of visitors who are tourists don't know what the stone is, and it's their first visit, so they want to get the story of Perth because they've come to Perth, and they don't necessarily always understand that's a big part of the story. There's also, we have timed slots, so there's actually so many people that we can take in a day, and at peak times, particularly during the opening few months, there were far more visitors through the door than there were slots available, and people were coming back. And what we're finding now is that we're getting into a pattern of normal, if you like, attendance, so that most people can come and there'll always be a slot available for them. They may have to wait 10 or 20 minutes, but there'll always be a slot and an opportunity for them. So it's a mixture of what people are interested in and what the availability for that is in. Originally, the work that we did identified potentially around 20,000 people would be interested in the stone in the original case studies and market research. So we're well exceeding that number.
Thanks for that, Helen. Do we allow people to book slots in advance?
Yes, we do. We use Perth Box Office, and people can book in advance. They can book in advance if they phone up the museum as well. We can do that at the desk. We do also take all the group bookings and the travel trade and tour operator bookings in advance. So yeah, and we've done that from day one.
If only you'd kept that question till last, we could have segued nicely from Perthshire Box Office into Perth Theatre and Concert Hall. But Mr. Finlay, I think you wanted to come in online.
Yes, thank you very much. I just wanted to endorse Helen's answer to the first question about the misinformation about the cafe. It's a matter that's exercised the board considerably, and I would just wish to place on record to endorse Helen's answer, and we need to move the narrative back onto the facts rather than on to misinformation that's been going around about the cafe. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. Vice Convener.
Thank you, Convener. And it's the topic of Councillor Forby's question and the subsidy that I wanted to explore a little bit. I suppose my question is, the cafe's coming to the end, or is at the end of its first year of trading. Has the cafe in and of itself broken even?
So the cafe of itself has not broken even. However, what we have seen is we put in place measures throughout the year to address what was, a loss in terms of its turnover. And we have seen improvement as a result of that. So we're on an upward trend. We had additional costs in the first year of operation. As I say, we didn't draw down any additional funding. So those costs have come out from the cafes operating. And the strain on business of starting a new business costs are quite usual, unfortunately, in a new business. What we have always said is that we would try and operate for a 2-year period and review that and see whether or not that was the opportunity to take it back out to market. But we do need to get it in a position where it's attractive to that market, and that's what we're working on just now.
Yep, I agree with that, and that sounds positive. I do, however, take issue with the statement that there is no subsidy, given that the cafe exists within a building built by the taxpayer, and that if a commercial operator can't necessarily afford to cover those losses in the first year. So I do take issue with the accusation that there was misinformation. But my next question, and moving onwards from that topic, you mentioned the number of journalists that came, and that was a good news story. I just wanted to check, did CPK reimburse any of those journalists for their expenses or travel costs, or any bloggers or the like for coming, or did they do that all off their own backs? Thank you.
So that was not funded by CPK. That was a piece of work that was supported by the council. It was a broader piece of destination marketing. So the costs for that piece sit within external funding that the council received. And forgive me, I can't remember the name of the external funding that was used for that. But Steve MacDonald or Suzanne Kaminski would be able to give you the information for that, because that's where the resource came from.
Yeah, I think I would like to receive that information, because I think one of the challenges I have here, and sorry to be so negative today, but sometimes the hat I have to wear, is that the number of journalists who attended has been shared with elected members and the public as a vote of confidence in the museum. However, we're now hearing that we were paying their expenses, and so it would be interesting to see those numbers, please. Thank you.
Councillor Massey.
Thank you, Convener, and thank you for the presentation. I think this question may not be for you, it may be for Stephen. With over 250,000 visitors and 2 million, I think you said, extra footfall in the high street, has there been any analysis done of the spend of these visitors and the extra footfall?
So that work is going on within the council, so I can hand that one over to Steve MacDonald.
Thank you. So it's time to come in there. Yeah, I mean, we have noticed a significant increase in the footfall, as Helen has evidence in her presentation, and that work is ongoing at the moment. So we'll certainly share that when that's being completed. But footfall, we hope, leads into increased dwell time and increased spend within the city centre. So we're working with businesses, etc., on that exercise at the moment. So we'll share that when that's been completed. Thanks.
And Councillor Welch.
And this is maybe for Mr. MacDonald. I'm just following up from Councillor Bailey's question. I'm assuming that investment in marketing, journalism, influencers, etc., is normal in this sector. Otherwise, I guess how are people supposed to find these places? Thank you.
happy to come in on that. So yeah, I mean, we do have a destination marketing budget internally within the council. We were successful in supplementing that with an application to the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, which increased that budget. So there's a whole range of activities within that budget that we use to market our destination. So, you know, attracting influencers and journalists to do pieces in the back of that are certainly part of that. But, you know, we can provide more information as Bailey asked for on, you know, specifically around this. But yeah, it does form part of our overall destination marketing campaign.
Thank you, that's helpful.
Okay, thanks. I think we'll add that action to the outstanding business statement. Just I think if there's no more questions, a final question from me then. I was intrigued when you were talking about the numbers visiting the gallery, to find out that the gallery had actually increased as well after the museum had opened. Intuitively, one would have thought that numbers would stay the same or decrease. What's driving an increase in numbers? And I mean, I think you mentioned about the sort of foreign tourists who were hearing about Perth Museum and coming to Perth. I know that the Ferguson collection is of particular interest to people in Europe to come and see. Do we market that as a destination thing to come and visit?
Yeah, absolutely. We have increasingly been promoting the art gallery alongside the museum as a kind of double visit, as well as the other things, Scone Palace or Black Watch, etc., that people can do. But the general lift and footfall in the city is bringing people through the door as well. And we have quite deliberately had a kind of run of both exhibitions and activity at the art gallery to attract people, particularly with a very local audience focus. So the hands-on art brings a lot of families in. That's a free space that families can spend time in. It focuses on sensory play, early mark making. It's rooted in early years, but very much around trying to engage people in the gallery from birth and bring families through the door. We also have the Ferguson exhibition redisplayed, and that opened in March last year. And we have the temporary exhibition programme, which brings people through. There is an additional exciting announcement that we'll be making in the summer about a new gallery and exhibition that will be coming, and that again is very deliberately targeted at bringing people to Perthshire and the wider Perthshire, but has its roots in the art gallery. So we continue to promote that jointly with the museum as part of the cultural offer of the city, but we also are looking at how we promote it on its own for people that may be interested in art but are not really so fussed about archaeology.
Okay, thanks very much. We'll move on now then. Thank you, Culture Perth and Kinross. Thank you, Helen. We'll move on now to Mr. Glasgow from Perth Theatre and Concert Hall. Can we get Mr. Glasgow's slides up?
Thank you very much, convener. I am going to rattle through the slides. I will let people digest what is displayed there, but we'll speak about other areas of Perthshire box office as we go, as I think everybody here is pretty well versed in the kind of first iteration of the project. So I'm keen to talk about where we see it going and actually what is the defining feature of the initiative. So if we could go to the first slide, please. So I think the main differentiator for me with Perthshire box office is, compared to other online providers, it's been developed specifically in response to some of the challenges that we as a venue and also our many partners and most importantly users face. And I think it's really important that although it is a ticketing service, the key focus is the accessibility that it enables. It's about streamlining the customer journey in the sense that many other providers only offer an online service. So when we launched officially last year after the pilot, one of the key things we were keen to do was to introduce an in-person and telephone service as well at no extra cost to anybody using it. And it was to increase reach for events, because one of the problems when you have providers that want to use Perth Theatre and Concert Hall's box office, or indeed other providers such as Eventbrite, they're suddenly competing in a very, very big playing field, and it makes it hard for them to stand out. And that was one of the key things for us in terms of cross-organisational working, was that it wasn't just a box office support, they were also getting marketing support and all the other services that we offer as a business to help them increase their reach. And over the past year, in terms of the bookers that we have brought in for events across Perth and Kinross, 62% of those bookers have been from across the region. 32% have been from elsewhere across Scotland, and 6% have been from further afield across the UK and internationally. I also think it's really important, aligned with Perth Theatre and Concert Hall's overall targets, that over the course of the year we've increased those from areas of socioeconomic deprivation booking tickets by 4%. So that's gone from 14% to 18% over the past year and supports our wider organisational objectives. If we could move to the next slide, please. So in addition to supporting audience accessibility, one of the things we've never really talked about at this forum is the accessibility that the platform also can enable for artists. And that's something I'm going to go on to talk about. But I think the other areas that it's helped with our community partners has been the process of onboarding onto a fully functioning platform, and that support's not available from other providers. It's very much just give us your information, we'll put it on sale for you, and there's no stewarding process, there's no relationship building, it's a purely transactional game. And I think for us it's been really insightful in terms of skills development with our community partners and also our staff, understanding the need to build a tailored package for everybody that wants to use the box office. That makes it perhaps more challenging at points. It can slow the process down, but I think it's been a really holistic and encouraging journey that's benefited each of our partners in different ways. And now that's what we want to turn to artists who are quite often working individually and without any support. If we could move to the next slide, please. I just want to pause here to highlight the community partners that I'm speaking about, as well as our ALIO colleagues and our prospect list for the year ahead. And I would like to put a call out to the room to please let us know if there's anybody that you think we're missing and anybody that you think could benefit from the service in different ways. One of the things that we've also done with a lot of the partners who are on screen is expand the service beyond ticketing, beyond marketing, to look at other things that people need some sort of provision for. So for example, running a membership scheme, running special offers. And the next thing that we're looking at is how we can also offer it as an advertising platform to people who don't sell tickets, but still have a cultural offering within Perth and Kinross. If we can move to the next slide, please. So the latest developments include the PBO Plus online shop, which I spoke about briefly the last time we were at Scrutiny. I'm going to come to that separately. We also introduced our community room hire rate for ad hoc bookings, and that's a really discounted rate for anyone that needs space within the venues when they are open and functioning anyway. I would say at the moment it's not been something that's been adopted by people. We have promoted it. But one of the challenges we face is the busyness of the venues and matching it up with the schedules of other community partners. But we're still trying and we're still speaking to those partners to look at what developments we could implement in order to better support their needs. And then obviously, as I mentioned there, the new facilities that we're introducing for those partners to further enhance the offering that they are giving to their customers. The last point just on enhanced data gathering, one of the things I'm really keen to look into now that we've done a full year and we have a full comprehensive data set is to look at the economic impact of the combined events. And we have a lot of data which can support our colleagues across Perth and Kinross in actually conducting that study. That will not be an easy task, but I also think it's a really exciting task and something that I hope that not just Perthshire Box Office, but Perth Theatre and Concert Hall as a whole organisation can support and again enable further skills development into data gathering and effectively reporting on the impact of individual organisations' work. If we could move to the next slide, please. So this just gives you an idea of some of the recent developments. I think one of the things we spoke about previously was the interest as to whether this could expand across Tayside. And we're working really closely with UHI at the moment on a number of initiatives across many projects, and it's great to see that through that partnership we've been able to ticket their events that have been delivered in Dundee. I won't speak specifically to the KPIs, it's just useful for you to have a note of them. The one thing I would say, however, and this is certainly no criticism because we're incredibly thankful that the Perthshire Box Office launched with the Stone of Destiny, but much as both Helen and I have spoken about before at previous scrutiny, there is the period when everything skyrockets, when something new launches, and that can actually skew your data and your figures long term. And I think it's fair to say, I don't know if you would agree, Helen, that we're reaching a settling point now. So year 2 will be a really exciting period of new insights and probably more sustainable insights where we can identify different areas of opportunity to continue to build and grow. Next slide, please. So the key initiative for me, which goes back to my original point around accessibility, is how we can support artists that want to work digitally, because there is not a considerable amount of support for artists working in Scotland that want to create digital content. Indeed, this initiative has been funded through the UK government's Creative Catalyst grant, and we're working with the artist, the Grey Hill, to look at how we can leverage other opportunities through our core funders network, but also other opportunities through incubators to support artists to produce work digitally. And part of that is to also combat digital exclusion, going back to audiences, as well as opening up different areas of income generation. So PBO Plus launched very softly. It's not been something that's been promoted widely because it's been going through a testing phase. And the way it launched was by supporting local playwrights who would like their texts to be read more widely by making them available on the online shop. And over the past 6 months, we've been working with a number of Scottish publishers, such as Berlin Press, Nick Hearn Books, to actually create a full catalogue of audio dramas and other digital works that could complement other events that we're promoting, and also more widely look at our community work. So one of the most recent developments we've been speaking with the publishers about is actually, could more of the audio dramas that we then go on to sell reflect what students are learning as part of the syllabus? If we could move to the next slide, please. And then looking more widely beyond Perth and Kinross and indeed Tayside, the next development with PBO Plus is we're actually working in partnership with the Dumfries Theatre Royal, who face similar challenges with their rurality and accessibility for audiences, and also the Gaiety and Ayr, who have also embedded the online shop. So they're going to offer a very similar service to us. The product will be curated specific to each venue and to each audience, but one of the things that we're working together in partnership is to collectively commission new work to also run on the online shop, and if successful, to then consider whether the data gives us a reliable enough picture to inform whether actually that could subsequently be commissioned as live work. So we're taking audiences on a full journey. Next slide, please. So looking to the future beyond PBO Plus and the most recent developments I highlighted. One of the things we're really keen to do with the community room hire is to offer access to other areas of our buildings that people wouldn't normally get to see and use, such as our wardrobe department, and to look at how that could tie in with other craft makers in support of UNESCO City of Craft. We're going to continue to grow the network, and I'm really pleased to share that we've just very recently recruited Hayley Smith, who joins us from the Watergate Centre and has an awful lot of experience working in tourism, and she's going to collaborate closely with Darren and look at the other partnerships that the organisation is developing to continue to bring more groups into the Perthshire box office model. One of the things that we do need to review after year one is to review and simplify the pricing structure. And that's not necessarily to increase costs, but one of the challenges that we have for the public is that smaller organisations can show a reticence around things like booking fees. So at the moment, we've been doing it as a percentage of the ticket rather than a fixed fee that's consistent across every organisation. And I think the barrier that we need to go over there, and one of the things that's unique about Perthshire box office compared to commercial delivery partners in the ticketing services sphere, is that we split 50% of the booking fee income with the partner. So it's an opportunity for them to cover some of their costs. So we just need to simplify that process a wee bit more to make it easier for them as the delivery partner, but also for the public that are booking, because the consistency is very important. And as I said, and I've touched on previously, obviously we're looking to expand more widely through the new partnership with the Airgate and Dumfries Theatre Royal, and are applying to separate funding pots to enable us to do so. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Glasgow. Have we got any questions for Perth Theatre and Concert Hall? You're going to get off scot-free. Oh no, there we go. Vice Convener.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the presentation. It looks like you've created a very valuable asset potentially in Perthshire box office, or PBO as we might brand it, to help it go a bit further. With that in mind, and thinking of part of the response to the previous question, is this something you have in mind to maybe structure as a trading arm in order that the success of this doesn't become a distraction from the core aims of your organisation? So is that something in mind for the future structure of your organisation, of putting this into a trading arm in order that it doesn't distract you from your core purpose? Thank you.
Yes, we've discussed that quite a lot, and it's quite complicated with the model. I don't know if it would become a trading arm, but rather a charitable subsidiary. And that's something we're looking to see if it's even possible at this stage, or if we had to go down that route, if it would almost need to sever off and have a separate board overseeing that. But I think at the moment we're quite a bit away from that. I would say the crossover with staff is a positive one just now, and similarly actually we're seeing that with partners, so it's actually brought new partners into Perth Theatre and Concert Hall. So at the moment it's manageable, but it's something that's been an active conversation, I would say, for about the past 6 months.
Brilliant. I should be agnostic as to what the solution is, but I'm pleased to hear that a solution is being thought of. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. If there's no more questions for Perth Theatre and Concert Hall, I've got a general question for the three ALIOs. In terms of the budget settlements from the council to the three ALIOs, one of the sort of encouragements there has been to increase shared services amongst the three of you. We talked about that 6 months ago, and when you were last at the committee, and I just wondered what further developments there had been in terms of sharing services between the three of you, if any.
Thank you. So we are continuing down that road in terms of reviewing the ALO, and at the moment we're working with the council and an external consultancy to review all of our businesses and identify the opportunities that perhaps we don't always see in front of us, and to look at what the future model of shared service provision and other options might look like. So that work is at a information gathering stage at the moment. So there is a raft of very complicated information that we're providing to that, but we continue to liaise with each other. The three CEOs meet on a regular basis. It's a topic that's discussed at all of our boards. So we are continuing to progress with what opportunities there are when they come up, but this wider piece of work is going on in the background.
Thanks. Okay. If there's no more questions or comments on the ALIO presentations, thank you very much to all three of the ALIOs, to Culture Perth and Kinross, Live Active Leisure and Perth Theatre and Concert Hall for your coming along and giving your presentations and answering our questions. Members, I'm going to call a recess now to allow the ALIOs to leave, and just so that people can stretch legs and so on. Can we be back at 11:25, please? Thank you. Okay, thanks very much, members. We'll now proceed to item 7 on the agenda, which is a review of interactions between businesses and the council, including business support activities. I think this report arose out of a question at the on the annual performance report about council spending to support business in the Perth Kinross area. We're joined now on the platform by Graham Pinfield, who's our team leader for business growth in the Economic Development Department, and by Serge Marone, who is the strategic lead for economic development. And we've got other economic development staff in the chamber as well, should they be required. But Mr. Pinfield is going to introduce this report. Mr. Pinfield, over to you.
Thanks, convener. So the report in front of you provides an overview of the economic and business landscape and the business performance in Perth and Kinross, and a review of the interactions between businesses and the council, with a focus on the council's own business support activities and related performance. So the report highlights how the current council business-friendly approach could be further enhanced, and how the council could review its funding for business support. The report recognises the overall good business economic performance and the varied interactions between the businesses and the council, and the diverse business support activities, including the cost and performance of Business Gateway and Grow Biz services. Just in terms of a little bit more detail that's in the report, Perth and Kinross does actually have a healthy and diverse economy, with no one sector dominating, and that's a strength, really. I mean, we've got agricultural and forestry well represented, construction, but professional business and financial services constitutes about 25% of the economy. And as we've been just hearing partly with the ALIOs, tourism is still 10% of our economy. So overall, we have about 6,630 registered businesses, and we have a high employment rate. So we've got a higher than Scotland average employment rate at 76.8%. And most of those companies are actually SMEs, as they are across the UK. But we also have some large employers, SSE, Aviva, and Gleneagles estates employ over 1,000 people each, and we have low unemployment. So we only have 2.9% in terms of this, which is much lower than the Scotland average. Our business stock rate is good, at 379 per 10,000 per 1,000 adults, and that puts us 10th in terms of 32 local authorities. Our business survival rates have been good for businesses surviving over 5 years, and that's been above the Scottish average for 14 years. We I've recently subscribed to a new database which is called Growth Flag, and that rated us in 2025, that annual report, as the highest in the UK for businesses likely to grow 20% over the next year. And some of those companies like Glen Turret in Crieff, Morris Leslie, Highland Spring, Gleneagle Hotels, SSE were likely or very likely to grow over the next 12 months. The coordination between agencies, which we address in the report, can sometimes be challenging. Getting the agencies to work together, focusing on businesses at the local level. But we have fostered better relationships with Scottish Enterprise, Skills Development Scotland, Slade, and the Business Support Partnership over the past 12 months, and we're subscribing to a master customer record, which is hopefully going to bring much more data on which businesses are being supported by which agencies. And we're tracking our own interactions with businesses, including top 100 businesses, through our own CRM system that we've developed over the past 12 months. And that will be supported by the Growth Flag data that we have. So we can focus on those businesses that are most likely to grow. But there are many touch points that is addressed in the report that the business have with the council, from non-domestic rates to environmental health to planning, licenses, as well as our own business support services. And we do suggest in the report that a cross-service officer group might be established to support that business-friendly approach a little bit further. For services that we support directly, like Business Gateway and GrowBiz, we're suggesting further alignment with our new Perth and Kinross Economic Action Plan and the regional prospectus for growth, and to provide further and better quantitative and qualitative information on jobs and business turnover and where those jobs are being created. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Pinfield. Councillor Robertson, you're first.
Thank you, Convener. Thank you, Mr. Pinfield, for your presentation. I've got a couple of questions. I'll just give them one after the other, or do you want me to come back later? Okay. Unfortunately, one of the perceptions that many businesses have is that councils and agencies like councils are holed up to their activities, and the amount of red tape involved in trying to get things done, they find it very, very frustrating. Things like trying to get a building warrant for a site. I had a company who were trying to develop in the in Kinross, in the industrial estate in Kinross, and they just about walked away because they just couldn't get any action from the council. And it was driving, and the chap said he was just a bit despairing when he came to me. I was going to ask you, Graham, if is there any way we can actually have a hotline for businesses who are looking to locate here or develop here, that they can come to get help, to get through the sort of quagmire of things like building regulations, responses from these sort of departments? Because time for businesses is money, as you know, and it's hard enough as it is for many of them without having any sort of hold-ups when we should be there to try to facilitate what they're trying to do. So could I have a response from that first of all?
Chair, I think Sergio may want to comment as well about the service in economic development planning more generally, but I think one of the things that we're trying to do and what we've tried to foster in the business growth team is a much more business friendly approach in our own department as well as across the council, and that's one of the things that we hope that this cross-service group, which maybe will meet quarterly, could could do. So all areas of the council are focused on how we can support businesses. For the areas that you mentioned, like building warrants, there are national performance indicators on that we do attempt to meet, but obviously workloads and staff issues impinge upon that. But hopefully, I mean, I think we have a good approach in our own department, and we're hoping to extend that across the council.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your question, Councillor. Yes, I think there's always room for improvement across the service, and I think that's what we aim to do by developing that enhanced approach, or be effectively business friendly, and the business growth team having a more friendly role in relation to broking, effectively the brokerage role across the service. But each area has its own processes. So if there are processes which are not efficient enough, we are obviously looking at improving them as much as we can. But I think, as Graham said, I think that's why we need to have potentially new platform, new ways of sharing information and working together and supporting each other to effectively develop the most business-friendly approach.
I'll just make a follow-up to that first question. So, a business who are having problems trying to get responses from the council, what would your advice to them be?
Well, first of all, obviously to talk at an early stage, because sometimes what's happening is businesses are coming at coming later in the process, and it's quite difficult after that to backtrack and gather the information. So at early stage, for bidding warrants or for planning, or approach the service at an early stage. If you don't know who to approach, we've got the business growth team who can be your friends in the council and can signpost you or help you to facilitate some of the conversation. But early stage is really the message I would like to give to the businesses.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that we've attempted to do by setting up a CRM system. So we're hoping, and certainly through the Invest in Perth team, we're hoping to get early indications so things don't end up sort of clogged up. So we get early indication from businesses as to whether they need support to find land, to find premises. If they are seeking planning permission, that we get that notification fairly early on. So that's what we're attempting to do. Yeah.
Right. Thank you for these helpful responses. The second question I've got to ask is, we have an organisation who you'll probably know about in Kinross called Aerospace Kinross, who have got substantial funding from the Tay Cities deal to develop a educational facility. But they are just cannot find a premises. And we seem as a council to be unable to help businesses to find locations to set up. They could move to Fife and find somewhere, but they really want to locate within Perth and Kinross, and have chosen Kinross Shire as their chosen site. What advice would you give to organisations like Aerospace Kinross? We certainly don't want to lose the funding that they've managed to gain. And it's a fantastic educational facility, and I would think it'd be a great shame if it was lost through our inability to support them.
Thank you for your question, Councillor. In relation to Aerospace Kinross, we've been working closely with them. So I had a meeting, recently with them about, their project and what they're planning to do. There will be a report going to the council in beginning of May, the 7th of May, effectively, the next one, talking about the midterm review of the Tay Cities deal, but also the process to review projects which are currently in development, and if they are facing challenges, how we can help them and how we can effectively reassess the deliverability of this project. So in relation to Aerospace Kinross, that will be through that process that we'll effectively try to support them as best as we can, particularly in terms of a site as such. More generally, in terms of site,
we've got obviously our Invest in Perth, access. So if somebody is looking for a site in Perth and Kinross, they can obviously access our support and advice through Invest in Perth. I mean, Kirsty Easton is in the room. She may want to give, if the convener agrees, to give a bit more information about Invest in Perth and how you can work for businesses.
Yeah, I just want to add to your first comment when you were asking about businesses contacting the council. So we've got our generic business development email address, which will encourage businesses to sign up to an email, but also we've got our business bulletin as well, which goes out once a month, which basically signposts information of different services that not only the council provide, but also our external partners as well. So that's also useful for businesses to sign up to. And we're also working closely with our contact centre. So if a business was to phone up, they're redirected to our team. So it was just to let you know that there's a number, when you asked about hotline, there is obviously the generic number available, and it will come to our team, and we can obviously offer and signpost to other services. We can speak to other colleagues to try and assist these processes. If there's any problems, obviously we can address those with the business. In terms of Invest in Perth, that is our inward investment brand for the Perth and Kinross Council. So that is our tool to promote sites that we've got within Perth and Kinross, but also that are privately owned. So we work closely with landowners, agencies, commercial agents. So if a business is looking for commercial property or commercial land, if they get in touch with us directly, we can meet with them, look at their requirements, see where it's suitable. It might not also always be in council ownership, but we can certainly facilitate discussion, look on the open market, help them as best we can to facilitate a site essentially that's going to meet their requirements. Because like you say, we'd like to retain them within Perth and Kinross rather than lose them to another local authority.
And I think as well, worth noting that in the budget, there was a significant increase in the commercial property investment portfolio budget. Okay, so we're going to go a bit analogue now, as Councillor Forbes is without his device, but he's put his hand up, very old-fashioned. Councillor Forbes, you've got questions.
Yeah, thanks, Convener. I've got a few questions on this paper, so just come back to me. I'll do them one at a time, but just come back to me when you feel it's my turn again. Graham, can I draw your attention to section 5.2 of the report, please? It references a number which, on the face of it, doesn't seem to make sense to me, but I'm sure there's an answer. It says 57,430 people generate a turnover of 9.84 million. That seems a large number of people for a relatively small sum of money, and I wondered if that was accurate, or if you had any thoughts on it. And the further to that question, if you look up the paper to section 4.9, and it talks about the potential loss of 33,000 jobs, are those two figures connected to each other?
Sorry, on the 5.2, I think that's the turnover in total of the businesses, the 9.845 million. Yeah. We can get back to you on that. I will check that figure and get back to you. And the other figure was, yeah. I know that was from Scottish Cities Alliance report looking at the impact of digitisation, robotics, and artificial intelligence on that sector. So that's an early report, which I know is being updated now by Scottish Cities Alliance. So that may be a bit out of date now, and was probably an overly pessimistic, but they're not connected. They're from different reports. Yeah.
Okay, I'll come back to you then, Councillor Forbes. Okay, Councillor Allen, do you want to come in next?
Got there, right, thank you. I'd like to ask what's probably going to be a strange or a stupid question first, but I need to understand. Are short-term lets considered to be a small enterprise?
I think it depends on the VAT threshold and whether they're operating as a business or not. That's probably a question for one of my housing or licensing colleagues. So in terms of the definition, I think, you know, looking at the VAT threshold and whether they're operating as a business is probably the answer.
Yes, I think it will depend on the legal entity behind the short-term let. So depending if it's a big company or a small company or an individual, or, you know, that will really depend on how what is the legal entity behind it.
So on that basis, would it be fair to say that we're not currently counting short-term lets within these numbers?
Yeah, I mean, they'd only classify if they were a small or micro business or an SME. Yeah, so there may be a few, but I think it's relatively few that operate in that way. Yeah.
My first question is on page 15 at 4.9. So I beg your pardon, it's not 15 or 4.9, it's page. So on page 14 at 4.5, we're talking about the action plan for Perth and Kinross Economic Partnership. And it goes on to say the action plan has developed through research of the evidence base, stakeholder engagement. It goes on to say, and a deep understanding of our strengths and needs. Can you maybe share what those are, please?
Thank you for your question, Councillor. Yes, I think the economic action plan has been obviously considered by the Economy and Infrastructure Committee, and we did a presentation in the committee about how the plan has been developed. And the starting point for that development was effectively evidence-based. So it's what do we know about the business that we have, the economic strength and weaknesses that we have. So they were effectively the strength and needs were effectively detailed in the economic action plan and the document, the information which was used to develop the action. For instance, in that report, one of a unique strength for the area is the business survival. For instance, it's quite clear that we've got an enterprising mindset in the area, particularly in the rural area, but across the area. And that enterprise mindset is resilient. So it's not only people are creating businesses, but are able effectively to continue to operate their business over a long period of time. The statistics that you have in the document, it shows the 5-year business survival rate. So that's quite a unique element compared to other areas which may be struggling with startups or survival in element. Some of the strengths came, and Graham mentioned that about some of the diversity of our economy in terms of some of the sectors. So that enterprising mindset is across the economy, not only in one specific sector. Some other local economy may suffer from being very dependent on one sector, employing a lot of people, and not necessarily, or maybe facing as well some quite important challenges, particularly technological or exposed to more global crisis. So there are different things. It's quite difficult for me to summarize all the strength and needs, but this is the kind of by understanding better the economic fabric of the area, we effectively can help better the businesses that we have here. And Graham mentioned the business growth element. So that's quite interesting to see which business is growing and which business has a prospect to grow. Now we have some of the statistics showing us who and the individual businesses, and we have cases where effectively some of the businesses have good prospect to grow. At the same time, other businesses are maybe struggling because of different challenges.
Okay, we'll go, I'll come back to you if you've got more, but we'll go through the other ones. Councillor Smith.
Right. You're not great. Thank you very much, by the way. Listen, this is just to satisfy my own curiosity on these statistics, etc. Working from home is a big thing nowadays, okay? So a lot of small businesses will start up at home. Now, I know that the VAT figure to register, etc., etc. Do you have an idea of, or can you get in contact, or do you know any sort of collaboration of how many people have their own wee businesses but are not in these statistics? Is it very hard to do, or is it almost impossible to find out?
It's a very good point, because since the pandemic, we know that working from home, working flexibly, has grown enormously. It's something that I don't think we were able to put into the report, but there are organisations that could help us with that. There's a lot of, I think Business Gateway does support a lot of these small micro businesses that are people that are operating from home, working remotely on quite often lifestyle sort of businesses. So that's something that we probably need to get more information on. But it is a growing trend, I think, and what we've been trying to do is get more digital connectivity to enable these businesses to operate, and organisations like GrowBiz that we support, I think, are particularly important to help those small rural businesses.
It was basically, you can imagine, so many people in big organisations that are employed to work at home, which are probably not in our statistics, because the company could, I know one company, for instance, one guy is based in England, but so just see how it doesn't balance up the statistics as such. It's just one of these things, Thank you.
I think we have to recognize the limitation of the statistics and how they're collated. And it's true that the figures that you have is based on registered basis for pay and VAT. So there will be obviously a number of businesses not registered for VAT and pay, which are functioning, but are not captured by these statistics. But unfortunately, that's what we have. However, working with our delivery partners like Business Gateway or GrowBiz, we've got a pretty good indication of the vibrancy of the people creating smaller businesses or micro businesses which are not yet to that register level. In relation to the place of work, how people are working, it's working both ways. So there are businesses which are located here but have obviously staff working from other places in Scotland or even the UK. But you also have businesses from other parts of the UK when you have people working here. And it's not uncommon, effectively, for people potentially to be employed by an organisation in London, but effectively working here in Perth and Kinross.
Vice Convener.
Thank you, and thank you for the report. It's certainly interesting to get the detail on the plethora of different funding avenues that are available. My question's about the long-term view we take on these things, or more to the point of how we look for causality between our funding and the impact it creates. If I was an angel investor, I'd have a really keen eye on what types of investment were making me good returns and what weren't. As a council, it's difficult because we invest in others, but not for our own direct gain. So therefore, my question is, do we as a council therefore review past funding and come back and visit it 2, maybe 3, maybe 5, maybe 10 years on to see what was most and least successful, so that we can work out where it makes sense to put future funding in order to achieve our goals most successfully? Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting question, and by looking at the databases that are available on the market now, we are getting more honed in the businesses that we support. So the Growth Flag database enables us to look at red flags also for businesses, and which we're actually consulting now to see which businesses we should or should not support. I mean, looking at match funding, I mean, in the Green Recovery Capital Growth grant, you know, we do look at the match funding that's available in that, and there's a big multiplier on what we provide, which is a relatively small grant, and how much the business actually puts into that. So we are getting more honed in how we can support those businesses using the data that we have. In fact, we're generally getting more data driven in so that we can target more effectively the services that we provide and the grants that we provide.
Thank you. And Councillor Welch.
Thank you, Convener. It was really a follow-up question around this aspect of data and the database. You know, when are you looking to do this, and what is the business case effectively for doing it? What additional insight are you looking to try and get?
Well, the database is our own CRM system we've developed over the past year, and that's now live. In terms of what we subscribe to in terms of Growth Flag, that's also live. We've only recently just signed up to that, but that's available to our staff so that we can look at any business that's already existing, any business that's thinking of locating. So we're using that to inform our intelligence. I think we'll be providing a further report to Economy and Infrastructure Committee on how this all might develop, but these tools are available to us now. And in terms of those national and local agencies working together, this is the master customer record, which we're also subscribing to. So we'll have more intelligence on who Scottish Enterprise is supported, whose Skills Development Scotland is supporting, so that we can make sure that we're not duplicating, we're just adding value to those businesses that aren't being supported elsewhere.
Thank you. And we'll come back to Councillor Forbes.
Yeah, thanks, Convener. Can I, Graham, draw your attention to 5.3 of the report, and it's the graph on latest registrations for new startups. I'm particularly interested in the tourism sector. It doesn't appear to be represented there, although it is represented if you go on down a few pages to the next graph. It does have its own place. I'm wondering, is that because tourism, there's been no new businesses registered that would fall into that category, or is it such an insignificant category for us that we wouldn't give it its own place on that spreadsheet?
I think it may be something to do with the time period that's actually capturing that data there, but I think there is leisure there, so that might include some of the tourism businesses. I mean, it's 10% of our economy still, but it did suffer, you know, during the pandemic. So in terms of the number of new tourism and hospitality businesses that are starting up, it might still be a little bit depressed. So it could be a recovery issue, and we could see more of those in another time period in the future, I think.
Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Convener. On page 23, 522, there's a bit there about business gateway services. And it goes on to say that the Council financially supports Business Gateway to deliver business support services. This is covered by service level agreement as part of a nationally funded contract managed by Dundee City Council with approximate costs of £485,000 to Perth and Kinross, a total of 1.5 million. The Council is limited in the degree of control over business gateway services due to the national COSLA contract and national set of performance indicators. The contract is currently delivered across Tayside by Elevator and is entering the third year of contract delivery, with the option to extend for another 2 years. I'm just wondering, in reading that, am I sensing a degree of not quite harmony, and are we minded to extend that contract for another 2 years?
I think that's a question. I mean, We do have control. We have a steering group and we have a board, which members are represented on across from across Tayside. So that's a decision that the board will need to take. Elevator, who actually deliver the contract across the Tayside region for Business Gateway, actually say themselves that they're somewhat restricted by the national performance framework. So I think there's a bit of a dialogue, and it's not only in Tayside, but from other Business Gateway delivery agencies across Scotland, that there is a somewhat constrained performance framework, but it is reviewed. So I think, in terms of what we refer to a future report to Economy and Infrastructure Committee, that's one of the issues that we'll look at, because we want to align much more closely Business Gateway and GrowBiz services more towards the Perth and Kinross Economic Action Plan and the regional prospectus for growth, and to focus a lot more on those growth sectors, which is something that we're pushing as a team. But obviously Business Gateway needs to support any and every business that comes through their doors. So they may be somewhat constrained by that national performance framework in doing that. And we're always trying to raising at the steering group and the board if we can focus more on the growth sectors, which they are attempting to do, but within the constraints of the national performance framework. So.
And maybe add to that, it's important to highlight the fact that the national contract for Business Gateway is aiming to provide a universal service. So that's why the constraints are coming in, because it has to be consistent across Scotland. So a business is not at a disadvantage to access the service in Perth or in Dundee or in Glasgow. So they have the same kind of consistent universal service with standards at national level. However, the flexibility is also coming in the local services that we can influence locally in terms of how the Business Gateway services are delivered locally. So there's two different levels. The first level is a national level, which is universal and quite standardized. And the more local level, we've got much more influence in terms of how the service can be delivered at Tayside level, but also at Perth and Kinross level.
Just slightly concerned about this because there's 5 fingers in the pie. Everybody's wanting to have their say, and it doesn't look like there's any direction. From what I've listened to today, it seems like there's some conflict in there. Maybe it's just constraints. But the question at the end of the day was, we've got an option to extend that for another 2 years. Are we going to do that, or are we going to review it? Thank you.
Yes, it will be reviewed, and that will be a subject that the board can consider at the future meetings. And it has already been discussed at the board and at the steering group, so it is a live issue, and we're well aware of the different options that there might be.
Just so that, in addition to that, obviously the Economy and Infrastructure Committee will be involved in that. Will be able to obviously assess the position before the decision is made.
Thanks, and I think just on that last point, that would be very helpful for the committee, the Economy and Infrastructure Committee, to at least be informed of the outcome of the review into the continuation of the Business Gateway contract, because I know that in the past decisions around the contract have been not hidden from the elected members here, but not necessarily as transparent as it could be. We'll come back to Councillor Forbes.
Yep, thanks, convener. I'm currently on page 22, and it's section 5.1, and it's the section about Scottish enterprise. It identifies that some businesses in Perth and Kinross are account managed by them, and just occurred to me, is there any concern that some of these businesses, either already established or perhaps potential new startups, being looked after by Scottish enterprise who have a Scotland-wide remit rather than a Perth and Kinross remit, could be encouraged out of Perth and Kinross to another part of Scotland? Is that a risk for us? And on the same topic, just along that chart a little bit, it says closer relationships have been sought with over the last 12 months with Scottish Enterprise. It really worries me that we've had to go and seek that closer relationship and ask for the information to flow. Is there some kind of issue there that we need to be concerned about?
No, not necessarily. I mean, it's Scottish Enterprise has been through quite a lot of changes over the past years, particularly in terms of how they wanted to operate. But I think now they've been through these changes and it's much more clearer how they want to operate. So it's easier for us to engage with them, and they are a member of the Perth and Kinross Economic Partnership. So we are, engaging them with them in the partnership, but also on a daily basis. When there is a request for locating in Perth and Kinross, the business growth team is working with Scottish Enterprise in terms of location. So we try obviously to attract businesses to Perth and Kinross, working with our colleagues in Scottish Enterprise, and it's particularly more efficient if we are clear on the type of businesses we would like to attract and the strength that we have that can effectively be promoted at national level. And Scottish Enterprise is the right platform for us to effectively promote that at national or indeed internationally through Scottish Development International as well. So no, I would say that the relationship is a good relationship, at the moment.
I'm reassured by that, so thank you.
Can I?
And Mrs. Easton, you wanted to come in.
I just wanted to add that I have monthly meetings with Scottish Enterprise contact that covers Perth and Kinross area. We also have the Tay Cities Trade and Investment Group. So we basically work with Scottish Enterprise and SDI. So any propositions that Perth and Kinross have, any opportunities, we feed in at a national level. So if they get any inquiries that maybe don't come to us, but they come to a Scotland level, they can at least filter that down to us, and they know what opportunities and that's available for businesses. So we aren't missing out in terms of that either.
Councillor Allen, any more?
Thank you. On page 24, it gives a breakdown of Perth and Kinross's costs, and near the bottom it's got something there about a community business advisor in Perth, which has cost nearly £60,000, but there doesn't seem to be anything against that person. What do they actually do?
I think this is the outreach advisor. They are maybe Kirsty might be better to answer this question, but it's something that we have supported in terms of reaching out to communities, and particularly deprived communities, and looking at how we can generate more businesses in those deprived areas.
Yeah, so this was through the UK Share Prosperity Fund. We have got a community business outreach advisor. So they're basically there to enhance engagement within communities that maybe haven't always had access. So whether there's maybe an inability to travel to local offices, lack of understanding of what support's available, fear of engaging with support, that their role is to engage with those people. So going out into rural communities, giving them options to drop into like local libraries, other areas, other buildings within these areas, to provide business startup support.
Okay, Councillor Forbes, have you got another one?
I do. Thank you very much. 5.7, which is on page 18 of the papers, would suggest to me that we're very, very heavily dependent on pretty much one large employer being SSE. Is that a good situation to be in?
Yeah, I think by and large, although fortunes of all companies go up and down, and I think they've recently had a sort of reorganisation due to their share price dropping, but I would say that SSE's presence in Perth is, for a small city, is very good. Along with Aviva and Stagecoach, I was always surprised before I came to Perth and Kinross at the number of companies that were headquartered in Perth, and given that they're in the energy transition, renewable energy sector, which is probably the largest and most dynamic growth sector in the UK economy at the moment, then it is a good thing. And we do have good relationships with both SSE and SSEN, and they employ 2,000 people. So I would say on balance, it is a good thing. Yeah.
I completely agree with everything you said, but my question, I maybe didn't make it clear, wasn't so much about SSE. It's the fact that you were earlier on saying that we don't have one industry sector that dominates, which I think is a good thing, but we actually do have one business which dominates, and I wondered if that was a cause for concern, not necessarily about SSE, which I think are a very successful business, and I'm delighted, like all of us, to have them and the others here in Perth and Kinross.
I think it's going back to the strength and weaknesses of an area and an economy. The fact that we have large employers is good, because that gives us that a platform effectively for investment, for attracting new jobs, particularly if they are in sectors which are growing sectors. So that's effectively supporting the overall economy. On the other hand, it's they're also subject to changes, potentially world crisis or global circumstances, particularly if they are effectively PLC like SSE. So we need to be also supporting the overall fabric of the economy, particularly the small and medium enterprises in the economy and in different sectors. So it gives us that resilience in case there's obviously something any challenges that we may face in the future. So it's that balance and that resilience that we need to build into our economy to make sure that we can effectively adapt if something had to happen to one of these large employers. But it's the mix of large employers, medium companies and small companies, which I think will give us that resilience and that dynamism to effectively catch up opportunities when they are coming up. So that's what's important. The startups numbers are also important. So we've got good startups numbers. We have to keep them quite high. So that gives us that base for effectively within the startups. There will be a few of these startups becoming these large companies. So we need to start to continue to feed that pipeline for supporting the resilience in our economy.
Sorry, they do sort of demand high level skills as well in terms of SSE, and they are an attractor for other businesses. So the supply chain is important. We were approached by one business recently that was attracted to come to Perth just because of the presence of SSE, because they were in the renewable energy business. But at the end of the day, we weren't able to find them premises that were suitable in the end, and so they went to Stirling. But that shows that it can be an attractor. SSE can be an attractor to other businesses.
And I think you've got a final one, Councillor Allen.
Thank you, convener. Yeah, it's about the numbers of businesses that are failing. There's not an awful lot of information in the report about the number of failures. At 5.2, it talks about Perth and Kinross experienced a net increase of 55 in the number of registered businesses in 2024, which is the number of businesses and the number of business births minus the number of business deaths. It would be helpful to understand how many actually we had as new businesses and then how many failed. But going forward on that, do we have an analysis on the businesses that are failing, and can we interact and try and recognise patterns and get involved with them before many more go to the wall? Thank you.
It's a good question. I mean, it's about where we invest our time and energies, and I suppose we're much more focused on those businesses that are growing than those that are failing. But given that we've got access now to the growth flag database, we can easily see a company that's got red flags on it. That means that they're not filing their financial returns, or they've got a change of directors and things like that. So I think we're in the position now that we can avoid those companies. But as Serge says, we do have very good business survival rates. So and that's been consistent, and we're much better than many of our competitors in terms of business survival. But it is something that I think we could look at a bit more. Yeah.
As a complementary, that we have also the capacity that if they are obviously business struggling, we can help them. So through the business gateway service, for instance, we have had in the past, these cases, and there was a package of supporting measures that we were able to effectively deploy, either in terms of the business support itself, the operation of the business, but also the employee in the business, or the people, the staff, in terms of training, retraining in terms of skills, see if there was any way of we can support the staff if they were effectively in difficulties there. So there's a statistics element, so we keep on that. We got red flags when they are. We have obviously information coming in, and if we know that there's a business is struggling, we are there to say, how can we help you, and we have the capacity to help them up to a point. Because at the end of the day, it's a business. So they have, if the business is failing, there's obviously some commercial elements that we cannot really interfere with, but we can still support the staff there, or support the business if we can through the services we have available.
Thank you for those comments. It's great that we've got so many new businesses, and we're trying to encourage and drive a thriving economy. If we can save some of those failing businesses, that would be fantastic. Thank you.
And I think you've got a final question as well, Councillor Forbes.
Thanks, Convener. I'm actually going to try and roll two questions into one, just to keep you happy. It seems to me there are a couple of things that businesses need, and one of it is land, and another one is employees. So I was talking to a business in my ward a couple of weeks ago, and he said to me quite literally, if someone could walk to the reception and tell them what their name was, he'd give them a chance at a job. It's that difficult to get people, particularly at the very lower end of the wage scale. Councillor Robertson referenced a business in his ward that couldn't get land, and you've just referenced another one that went Stirling because we couldn't get them land. So on the land issue, what are we doing about that? Because that would appear to me to be a problem that we have in Perth and Kinross. For example, are we looking at any opportunities round about the Crosstail Link Road that we could build on that? And have you got any thoughts about what we could do to solve the lack of the kind of lower skilled economy? Because this business in my ward has an issue. I know Tayside Contracts on all their vans are advertising for staff, and they can't get them. And I think as well, Housey Care vans go around with notices on the back looking for staff. Stagecoach buses have got notices up, can you drive this bus, kind of thing. So it seems to me there are two clear problems there. So perhaps some indication of what we can do to help those businesses. Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Forbes. On the first one, on employment land, effectively, and commercial properties, there are obviously sites which have been identified through the local development plan. So that's a process which is quite important to make sure that the land is identified and it's earmarked for that type of use and the different type of use that the business may need. And so there's that process. The existing LDP 2, but obviously the new LDP 3. The council just approved the evidence report for LDP 3, and we will go into a phase of calling for sites. So effectively, it's about calling to the people of Perth and Kinross to say, look, do you have a site which could be suitable, or what you would like to do with your site? And that will be going through the process of LDP 3. Meanwhile, so that's a kind of a long term, because it needs to be identified so effectively these businesses can develop the land and apply for planning permission to effectively develop the land. But meanwhile, the council has agreed through the last budget to boost its own commercial property through the CPIP, and there's an extra 7 million has been approved, by the council for the council to develop its own commercial portfolio, and that portfolio is developed. New service land has been developed and delivered, and new business units are made available to the market. That's one element, but as a council, the primary providers of employment land and commercial properties is naturally the private sector, because that's what they are here. But in some cases, particularly in Perth and Kinross, the economics are not always positive for the return on investment, so it's quite marginal sometimes. So that's why the council is intervening for its own commercial program, but also by trying to encourage a the development of existing identified sites which have not been developed yet. And we are trying to do that through infrastructure development. So you mentioned the Cross-Telling Road. That's a major piece of transport infrastructure. So the council has taken forward, but that has allowed to unlock different sites which were dormant up to now because either the access was not so right or the private sector was a bit reluctant to invest. But now with the infrastructure being there, there's obviously that willingness is much more visible from the private sector. So there are different ways that we can encourage the development of employment line, either directly by the council or by supporting the private sector to take advantages of infrastructure developed by the council or by others. In terms of skills, that was an element highlighted in the economic action plan in terms of the challenges we have with economically inactive people in Perth and Kinross. As Graham said, the unemployment is very low. So the only reserve that we have in terms of people are the people who are effectively economically inactive for different reasons. And so what we're trying to do through different programs, and particularly the employability program, is try to effectively to address the different barriers that these people have to go back into the labour market. That will bring some people into some of the jobs you were mentioning. But there's still a deficit, and the deficit is coming, and this was quite clear in the statistics, is the fact that the immigration and the difference between in and out migration is not favorable. So we don't have any new people coming into Perth and Kinross to effectively occupy this post or apply for these positions. So we have a deficit there, which is quite difficult to fill, to meet. That gap is quite difficult so through economically inactive and trying to bring them back into the labour market, attracting obviously other people to the area, but Perth and Kinross is not unique in Scotland and even in the UK. There's a very short-term shortage of staff, particularly as you mentioned in some occupations, and the council has a role to play with that because, as you mentioned, there's vacancies in the council. In some areas of the council, we're struggling to recruit. So we need to do more to effectively grow our own workforce by different ways to attract, through apprenticeship or through other ways to try to obviously have more people coming through the pipeline. But that's not it's not easy. And there's a competition, obviously, between private, public, and between Perth and Kinross and the rest of Scotland or indeed the UK. So we're trying to do everything we can to use all the different tools we have to address, these issues.
Thank you. And just on the issue of the land availability, might be mistaken in thinking this, but do the council not maintain a list of vacant commercial properties? And I'm getting nods, so that's a yes. But does that also include vacant employment land? So I can think of a business in my ward which has recently closed down. There's a site there with a building on it, which could be used for another one. So I don't know whether it's just commercial properties we maintain a register of, or whether we also do, sort of factory space, office space, that sort of thing.
Yeah, so we keep a list of all commercial premises, so whether that's land, office space, light industrial, general industrial. So we do have a list of all of those. And as I mentioned earlier, we work closely with commercial agents, so we know what's been brought to the market, what's not. More often than not, we can phone them up and understand why a bit of land's been sitting there for a while, if there's an issue with it, and how long that's going to be until it's brought to market. So we do have all that intelligence.
Thanks very much. It might be useful to circulate it, because that's the sort of list of properties that would be helpful to exactly the sort of business owner that you were talking about in so forth. Okay, I'm not seeing any further questions, so thank you very much for the report. In addition to the item we mentioned earlier, I've noted also that we're just going to get follow up on the clarifying the turnover figure in section 5.2 and the classification of short-term let businesses. I'm not going to read out the recommendations because they're quite substantial, but I know that the strategic lead and I have just have double checked with the convener of the Economy and Infrastructure Committee that he's happy to receive the reports detailed in 2.1, 2.2 and 2.3 to a future meeting of that committee. So on that basis, can we agree the recommendations in the report? Okay, thank you very much. We're now going to move on to I'll just let officers change places. Thank you very much to all of the economic development staff there for their contributions. We're now going to move on to item 8 on the agenda, which is the summary report on Care Inspectorate and Education Scotland inspections. But the Vice Convener is going to lead the discussion on this item and on the following item, item 9.
Thank you very much. I'd like to in turn call upon please Mr. McCluskey to introduce our report today. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Vice Convener. The purpose of this annual report is to provide an overview of the performance of education and learning services inspected and reported on over the past year by both the Care Inspectorate and Education Scotland, and to set out an overview of those inspection outcomes since 2016-17. Since the last report brought to this committee, 51 Care Inspectorate reports and 4 Primary Nursery Education Scotland inspections have been published. There have been no secondary inspections published. It's our request that the Scrutiny and Performance Committee scrutinises and comments as appropriate in the contents of this report. And I, of course, am happy to address any questions that the committee has.
Great, thank you very much. So if anyone has any questions, please intimate in the chat. There being no questions, or to give people a while to think about their questions, I wanted to ask Mr. McCluskey, in reading the report, I see there is a problem of sort of small sample sizes. It's very hard to read any trends into this data, particularly in the secondary sector. Do we know when the next inspections will come around specifically for secondary settings, please? Thank you.
So Education Scotland will tell us that once schools haven't been inspected for 10 years are then liable for inspection. So we obviously know that information, and it tends to follow a kind of chronological pattern thereafter. So we certainly, as part of our own risk analysis, are aware of those schools that in our terms are red hot for inspection, and that's part of our risk matrix and the work we do with schools. There has been one short model inspection in a secondary school within Perth and Kinross, and the publication of that is due for next week. So unfortunately it just falls out with the timescale of this committee, but it will be part of the report that we'll read next week. And there's also been a return visit from HMI to Perth Academy. Again, I don't have a publication date for that, but I'd expect it to be happening within the next 2 to 3 dates. It's a letter because it's a revisit, but again, that'll be part of what we look at in the next year's report.
Great, thank you very much. And then a question from Councillor Allen, please go ahead.
I do, thank you. On page 47, there's a chart there which talks about secondary overview by performance indicator. It's just a simple question really, and it's not to dig too deeply, but do we have any concerns that none of our establishments recorded either excellent or very good?
Yeah, obviously excellent and very good is the very tip, the apogee of what we're trying to get. I would say excellent ratings are very rare in the secondary sector across Scotland. As an example, I think there's been one excellent rating for learning and teaching happened since the new inspection model in 2018. Very good ratings are more common, and that's certainly what we're striving for. We're trying to take all of our schools who are currently get ratings of satisfactory up to good, and those who are good to very good. So that is part of our journey. And while these particular schools at that particular time weren't rated as very good for those particular QIs, I do believe that we'll see a change in that in the very near future.
Great, thank you. So there being no further questions, we are asked to comment on and scrutinise this report. Does the committee agree that we have suitably commented on and scrutinised? Perfect, thank you. So that being said, we'll move forward then to the next report, navigate my bookmarks. So our next report is item 9, which is the Perth and Kinross Health and Social Care Partnership Clinical Care and Governance Assurance Report. And this one is to be introduced, please, by Aaron Singh, who is the Chief Social Work Officer and Strategic Lead for Children, Families and Justice. So please proceed with your intro, Mr. Singh.
Thank you very much, Vice Convener. So this report before committee today is an assurance report in relation to those services that are delegated by the Council to the IJB and delivered by the Health and Social Care Partnership, specifically those that relate to social work and social care. The recommendation within the report is of reasonable assurance. There's just a couple of bits and pieces I'll pick out the report for committee today. Section 3 of the report notes the risk assessment and review that is undertaken by the Clinical and Care Governance Forum, which is proportionate in terms of assurance. 3.4 of the report notes that there was one adult social work and social care risk which was at red, and that was specifically in relation to the hospital discharge team. Section 3.5 of the report does note some of the mitigations that were put in place at that point in time. I can further report to committee since that time that the risk rating has been reduced, and that's been on the back of successful recruitment and posts being filled. I'd also like to draw attention to section 3.11, which is the complaints summary of the report, which notes the level of complaints that have been addressed over the reporting period. The top themes are noted there in relation to service provision, employees, quality of care and communication. I would note that the number of services that we provide, and you can see a breakdown of all the types of complaints that we receive according to the different teams, is very small, and we do check for any kind of trends or any themes that emerge from them. But I can reassure committee today that that assurance takes place within that forum. The other item that I'd just like to draw committee's attention to today is in relation to section 3.15 of the report, and that's in relation to drug-related deaths, and specifically in relation to MAT standard 7, which is currently sitting at amber, and that's just really to provide assurance that this is a national issue that we are working alongside colleagues in government to progress. So MAT standard 7 is about providing choice to individuals about where they can receive their support from, and particularly in primary care. Unfortunately, not all primary care providers are set up to provide that support, so therefore we are limited in terms of to what extent we can progress that. So it was just really to give a bit of context in relation to that. So happy to take any questions, Vice Convener. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much for the report, and thank you very much for the introduction. The first question we have is from Councillor Robertson. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Thanks, Vice Convener. Thank you for running through the report with us. I'd like to raise an issue which seems to be becoming more common, in as much as elderly and vulnerable people being released from hospital during the night. I know of 2 instances that elderly people have been sent home from hospital in the early hours of the morning, with no people who actually live on their own. And I'm wondering if this is going to be standard practice, because I think it's quite alarming that that should be the case. And I just wondered if you know if that is standard practice and why this is happening.
Thank you for, sorry.
Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, thank you. So Thank you for the question. I mean, in relation to hospital discharges, they sit with the NHS Tayside. It's not an area in which the council has any locus. What I can do is I can take the question back and I can ask for clarity to be provided directly to you if that's helpful.
That would be very good. In the last occasion, which was just 2 weeks ago, fortunately, the lady concerned actually had a contact detail in the street, and she phoned her contact person to make sure that they could let her into her house because they had a house key. It seems absolutely crazy that should happen, but it's something that certainly worried me, and I've heard it on more than one occasion. So I'd welcome your help with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Robertson. Quick question to you, Councillor Robertson. When you refer to early hours of the morning, what sort of times are we talking about here? That might help Aaron in finding an answer. Thank you.
I'm talking about 3 o'clock. So it's during the night. It was one of my neighbours, and the neighbour who actually helped out had to get out of bed and get dressed, and it's absolutely incredible.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Forbes, I think you just put your hand up. Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks, convener. Aaron, this may not be for you, but I'm looking at page 57. It's regarding prison healthcare, and to the right of it, it says hosted. Does that mean it's within the scope of you to answer a question on, or is it for someone else?
Yeah, so the IJB has delegated responsibility for prison health services.
Okay. I just wonder if the prison healthcare facility is fully staffed across both prisons, and I'm wondering, I think at a previous discussion we'd been trialling a service where we paid doctors more than they would get anywhere else to work in prisons. That seemed to be working, if I remember correctly. Is that still the case? Are we still paying doctors more to work in prisons, and therefore is it proving easier to get doctors into a prison than it might well be into general practice out in the community?
So what I can advise is that we were recently provided with an assurance report in relation to prison through care. I think there are still issues around the recruitment of GP or doctor cover within the prison setting. I know they are looking to see whether or not they can look. There's issues around terms and conditions for GPs moving within to the prison setting. So I think there's a piece of work that's being done to see whether or not that can be managed. But if you want, I can maybe do a deeper dive and come back to you with maybe a wee bit more details.
Yeah, I'd be very grateful. Thank you.
Okay, thank you all. I'll pause in case there's any further questions. Okay, so we are asked to scrutinise this report and then decide whether we agree with the level of assurance as being reasonable assurance. Are we content with that conclusion? Great, thank you very much. And then back to convener to close the meeting.
Thank you very much, Vice Convener. Thanks to all of the officers from the various services who've provided their reports and answered questions, and the same to the members of the 3 arm's length external organisations in the first part of the meeting. Thank you all members for your attendance and engagement, and the meeting is closed.